some of you. Hi, Sune. How are you? But I know we have a lot of new members here. I guess I can officially call the meeting to order at this point, Andrew? Okay. It's kind of going to be like a tag team today. We're all going to kind of help each other out in sharing things and what's going on. I am the co-chair, as I just said. Andrew's here from staff, and I do want to go around the room and have folks introduce themselves. I don't really know where to start, so let's just start over here on my right.
Good morning.
Hi, Bill.
Make sure you
Push your button. Oh, yeah, Andrew has a few announcements here, and one of them is make sure you push your button.
Yes, let me say before we get started with all the introductions, just to make sure you push your button so that people can hear you, especially the ones that are on conference call. That's the way they can hear what your response is through the microphone. Second, you have a envelope at your place that is for the lunch money. Make sure you put your money inside the envelope for Cindy. First of all, I want to say thank you to Cindy Valdez. She's our admin for the Ltac, and she has done an outstanding job. She's the one that was giving you all the emails, preparing all the materials, along with Elizabeth Steele, who is our newest member here at the coordinating board. She helped do the new member orientation packet. Both of them have been invaluable in this process of getting the meeting together, and I want to say thank to both of them. I think those are the two main ones, the two main rules I had to give out.
Well, not only we're being audio recorded, we're also being video recorded. So just want to let you know that the video is going too. All right? So again, let's start again.
Good morning. My name is Bill Angrove. I'm the Associate Vice President for Distance Education at Sam Houston State University, and this is my second year to participate on the committee.
And I'm Michelle Betancourt from Wharton County Junior College. I'm the Director of Distance Education, and this is my first year on the committee.
Daniel Spencer from Temple College. I'm the Associate Vice President for Academic Outreach and Extended Programs, and this is my second year on the committee.
Mike Gargano, the Vice President for Academics, Faculty, and Student Affairs at the Health Science Center San Antonio, and this would be my first year.
Andrew Lofters, Program Director with Workforce Academic Affairs and Research and Facilitator for the Ltac Committee.
And I'm Steve Levy, Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Instruction at Houston Community College, and I've been here for quite a few years. I really can't count how many it's been, but it's been a while.
I'm Todd Leach. I'm the Vice President and Chief Information Officer at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, and I'm a rookie.
Hi, I'm Patsy LeMaster. I'm the Associate Vice President for Teaching and Learning at Amarillo College. It's my first year.
I'm Pam Morgan. I'm the Director of the Center for Continuing Professional and Distance Education at Midwestern State University, and this is my first year as well.
Mr. Naib Al-Soleh, I'm the Associate Vice Provost at the UT San Antonio, and I have no clue how long I've been at this.
I'm Sherry Pappas, and I'm the Coordinator of Academic Affairs for the A&M system, and this will be my second year as well. So.
Good morning. I'm Patrick Plush. I'm Associate Vice Provost of Learning Enhancement at the University of North Texas. And I, like Steve and Sune, do not know how many years I have been. I do know that I'm bumping into term limits, I think.
Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Pam Quinn. I'm Provost and CEO of the LaCroix Center for the Dallas County Community College District. This is my, I believe, second year, but many, many years ago I also served on this council as well.
Good morning. My name is Bill Robertson. I'm an Associate Provost for Academic Technologies at the University of Texas at El Paso, and this is my first year on the committee.
Good morning. My name is Jerry Cifuentes. I'm the Distance Learning Director for Laredo Community College, and this is, I believe, my 2.5 years here.
Well, you just stole my line. That's what I was going to say, too. Thank you for all of you coming. Andrew? Oh, we have a few folks on the phone. Okay. Why don't, who do we have on the phone? Why don't you just go ahead and try to...
Why don't we go ahead and start with Corey? Corey, you're on the phone. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Corey Davis. I am the Director of Online Learning at Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio. This is my first year.
And I believe Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle Dudon. I'm the Director of Distance Learning and Instructional Technology for Texas A&M University, Kingsville.
And are there any other Ltac members on the phone line? I think that's it.
Okay. Well, welcome to all of you, personally and virtually. And one of the things, I know we have election of a new chair coming up, but one of the things that I want to encourage all the existing members and obviously essentially all the new members to do as well, I don't think many of the existing members have a problem with this, is to participate and speak up. Please participate in the conversations. Don't be afraid of saying something that we might have already covered. Don't be afraid of saying something or that you might think may be inappropriate or whatever the case may be in the obviously professionally in the conversation. Lord knows I've done it 100 times already too. So please participate. We really welcome all of you new folks to be here, and we really appreciate your participation. With that, let's move on to agenda item number 2, which is the election of the new chair. I don't know if we have to give any introductory information. We had a chair, but our chair has since gone off the committee.
Correct.
And we do need to elect a new chair. I am the co-chair. I'm going to remain being the co-chair for the remainder of this year. But I have so much going on in my office and so many things going on at HCC, at Houston Community College. Andrew and I had a long conversation about it, and we just decided that I couldn't do it. So to take the chair. And so I would like to open the floor for nominations for the new chair of the Learning Technologies Advisory Committee. Do we have a nomination?
Well, this is Sherry Pappas, and if Pam, are you still on the committee? I'd like to nominate Pam as a chair. Will you rotate off soon or no? You should be eligible. Oh, then she's eligible. So I'd like to nominate Pam Quinn.
Very good. We have Pam Quinn. I just asked Andrew if I can second, and I'd like to second that nomination. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, going once, going twice. All right, let's close the floor to Patrick. Sorry, I'm sorry.
I move to close nominations.
Okay, so moved. Do we need to vote on that, or just go ahead and vote on the chair?
Vote on the chair.
Vote on the chair. Okay. Can we do it by? Do we have to do it by closed ballot, or can we do it by open consensus, raising of hands? I don't know the procedure for that.
I would say that it's fine for open consensus, raising of hands for the vote.
Okay. In that case, is that all right with everybody? Okay. In that case, everybody in favor of Pam Quinn being the chair of the Ltac, please raise your hand. Okay. Anyone opposed?
Remember your phone members.
Phone members. I can see you raising your hands out there.
However, at this, not right. They have to be present to vote. So what we have here is fine.
All right. So it looks as though we have unanimous vote here, and I'd like to welcome Pam as the chair. So.
Yes, we have a spot for you here.
Can I ask a question? What is the co-chair's role, Steve? You said you would remain.
To assist the chair, primarily. But Pam and I talked to her right before I got up here, and Pam and I are going to kind of co-run this meeting. So it's kind of going to be a meeting by committee, if you will. Andrew is certainly going to also cover a number of the agenda items here as well. So it's really going to be a group effort today. So welcome, Pam. Pam's on her way up here. Okay, obviously the next thing on our agenda is the consideration and approval of minutes from the July 1st, 2013 meeting. As you can see, we haven't met in a while. It's taken us a while to get it all together. Has everyone had the opportunity? I think that you were emailed. Everybody was emailed the minutes, weren't they? Yes. And I think they're also available online as well. But have you all had the chance to review this? Okay, because there's going to be an agenda item in the afternoon which is talking about priorities from the last meeting, which a lot of that is in the minutes right now, and also discussion of future Learning Technology Advisory Committee priorities, which may give us some talking points for a little bit later as well. So I want to make sure you've taken a look at that too, and if you haven't already gone through it thoroughly, take the chance to do that before we get to that agenda item this afternoon, because I think it's going to be worthwhile. So all in favor of approving the minutes from the July 1st, 2013 meeting, why don't we just go by voice consent? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, well, the minutes are approved. And now we get on to discussion of Learning Technology Advisory Committee changes. And Andrew's going to take that one, right?
Yes. From the last legislative session, from our Sunset Bill, Senate Bill 215, the advisory committees were looked at very closely in that bill, and it caused some rules to be changed within the Texas Administrative Code. Each advisory committee has been defined, and the purpose has been closely monitored inside these rules. If you look at the rules for the Ltac committee now, which this morning we gave you an insert that has Chapter 1, Subchapter O, and it tells about the purpose of the Ltac committee, the composition, the terms, all that are defined within Chapter 1, Subchapter O for the Ltac. That's the new change that we've had since the last time we've met. These are all put inside Texas Administrative Code. Now, I do want to take at this time to talk about the charge for the Ltac committee. We're to do research and analyze the distance education and learning technology in the state of Texas, and to provide recommendations to the board for things that we think could strengthen that program here in state. We are also given the charge of approving distance education doctoral programs, not only new programs, but existing programs that are changing modality. So if a program is already existing and they want to become an off-campus face-to-face program, that needs to come in front of us as well. I think we're at a point where distance education is very much looked at in the state of Texas. And I think that we are in a position to make recommendations to not only the board, but these recommendations also go towards the legislature as well. So that is our charge. I think that's the main change right now.
Let me also give you one or two historical points, and they're related to what Andrew just said. Some of you may remember, but obviously the new folks probably don't. This committee used to be called DEAC, D-E-A-C, the Distance Education Advisory Committee. Several years ago, I think it was about 3 years ago, perhaps even 4 years ago, I believe Rob Robinson was the chair at that time. The committee really took on a brand new charge, and its charge was not only confined to distance education activities, but also to a number of different learning technologies related to distance education, and those perhaps that might not be, but certainly learning technologies that support education. So there was a significant expansion in the charge and scope of what this committee can consider, and that was a very, very important change to this group. The other thing I was going to mention is that Andrew said that different doctoral programs need to come through this committee for an approval process, and we have one today, in fact. That is true. In the past, it used to be also that each and every college, and you probably remember this from the old days, each and every college used to have to present, I think it was every 5 years, I can't remember exactly how often it was, an institutional plan. So, of their distance education programs. That is no longer required because it appeared, for a number of different reasons, but one of the primary reasons was that this committee was really getting involved in reviewing plans as distance education began to flourish around the state. And every college, every community college, every four-year school had either associate's degrees or bachelor's degrees or master's degrees, or those doctoral programs that had to be approved. It really, really, really became to be a heavy burden, if you will. For that and other reasons, which I won't go into now, now we are only reviewing doctoral programs, right? We're not reviewing master's programs.
Correct. Those are handled at the staff level.
That's why all you will see in terms of the approvals, and you'll see usually one or two per meeting, you'll see doctoral program approvals that are involved in distance education delivery. So that's kind of the historical background of that.
No, that's correct. I think that's it for the changes inside the Learning Technology Committee as far as rules and rule committee changes. The next one, can I go to the next one on the agenda? The next point on the agenda is discussion of proposed distance education Doctor of Occupational Therapy, OTD, and Occupational Therapy at Texas Women's University to be offered online. And I just want to make sure, on the telephone, do we have Texas Women's University there?
This is Catherine Candler from Texas Women's University. I am the director of the School of Occupational Therapy.
And I'm Linda Murphy. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning with Technology at Texas Women's University.
And this is Larry LaFleur. I'm the Dean of the Graduate School at Texas Women's University.
Well, I'm glad to have all of you on. Thank you for calling in this morning. This has been on our radar for a little while. The OTD program is a new program in the state of Texas. I don't really want to give a total presentation on the program since we have the actual department here right now. And I was wondering, Dr. Candler or Dr. LaFleur, would you like to give a short presentation of the program, a brief description of what you are proposing to the Ltac committee?
I'm going to defer to Dr. Candler, who's the director of the school there.
Okay. All right. Well, we are proposing a post-professional Doctor of Occupational Therapy degree to answer needs beyond entry-level education in occupational therapy. Texas Women's University currently offers and will continue to offer a robust entry-level degree in occupational therapy at the master's level. The school graduates over 100 occupational therapy practitioners annually and has contributed over 5,000 to the workforce since the 1970s. Yet healthcare is a dynamic environment, and the needs of this workforce and their clients are also dynamic. Entry-level education produces qualified generalists to the field. Once in the field, there is a need for advanced education with a specialized focus. Healthcare systems are evolving into ever higher complexity. There is a need for a cadre of leaders who are prepared to actively contribute in the development of these systems. And the need for occupational therapy education remains high. Practitioners qualified to contribute in the classroom as clinical faculty are in high demand. Therefore, we are proposing a Doctor of Occupational Therapy degree, a clinical doctorate, to be added to our offerings to the state of Texas. We currently offer a PhD in occupational therapy with a research focus. We see our Doctor of Occupational Therapy as an advantage toward occupational therapy clinicians. We would like to offer this primarily through distance education technology. We have designed the program in this way for two reasons. The first, as we see the demands of the program and its objectives will be best met through distance learning. And second, because the School of Occupational Therapy at Texas Women's University has the resources to provide quality education via these methodologies. The demands of the program and its objectives are best met through distance learning. Students of the Doctor of Occupational Therapy degree will be full-time practicing clinicians. Designed from a learning by doing philosophy, the curriculum is structured to embed learning activities within each student's daily work environment. The curriculum is designed for the part-time student. The distance education format allows pursuit of this advanced education without removing practitioners from the workforce. Scholarly community is built via several face-to-face contacts and cemented by distance assignments. We feel that the active objectives of the program to produce master practitioners advocates in healthcare, and qualified educators are best achieved by engaging the professionals within their individual real-world environments, and a distance education format allows this type of professional growth. The School of Occupational Therapy at Texas Women's University has the resources to provide quality education via distance education methodologies. The proposed Doctor of Occupational Therapy degree is built on our experience with delivering our PhD degree in occupational therapy. This degree was granted distance education status in 2011. We have experienced success with this program, and this fall graduated our first distance education student. The school also provides a section of our master's program via distance education, and all faculty members are accustomed to the demands of being a 3-location program, Dallas, Denton, and Houston. Faculty members for the Doctor of Occupational Therapy, therefore, are experienced and have been successful with delivering distance education. All have received and continue to receive training and support. For example, core faculty members for this program have received Quality Matters training. The school is also fortunate to be a part of Texas Women's University because Texas Women's University has a strong infrastructure for distance education in hardware, software, and peopleware. Whatever our needs, the offices of teaching and learning with technology and learning technology support are here. And I'm glad that I have Linda Murphy here to answer to questions about that support that Texas Women's University provides for our program. So we are proposing a post-professional Doctor of Occupational Therapy degree, and we appreciate your attention to our request.
Thank you, Dr. Candler. On January 27th, staff, along with 3 consultants from the field, we had Dr. Joanne Wright from the University of Utah, Dr. Steve Taft from Washington University in St. Louis, and Dr. Al Copolillo from Virginia Commonwealth, all who have OTD programs already established and have online OTD programs, went to evaluate Texas Women's OTD proposal. One thing, there's 2 parts. One is that they were very impressed with TWU's infrastructure as far as distance ed is concerned. They have everything, not only just for the instructional part, but as far as resources. The library system was very, you could tell that was very well integrated into the program. They actually commented that Texas Women's was more advanced than theirs, so as far as the infrastructure is concerned. The other part that I did notice was that during the site visit, we had to interview students, and students that might be considering going to or trying to enroll inside this OTD program. They were very, very comfortable with the distance ed instruction at TWU. And one of the questions I asked was, if you had your anxiety level of 1 to 10, if you were going to get accepted into the program, what would you be? It was like 1. No one wanted to. They said they were very comfortable. They have had a lot of experience going through TWU in the master's degree program, and right now, from the consultants' reports and from staff review, staff recommends approval. Just go ahead.
Let me make a few comments. Well, let me ask Andrew a quick question. Were there any? I've looked through the report. Not in word for word, but I've looked for some key areas that I think we would need to emphasize, and I'm going to comment on them in just a minute. I wanted to know if your committee, your panel, your review panel, had any comments that that TWU needs to look at, or perhaps just examine for improvement at all, because it looks like an absolutely excellent program to me too.
Yes, the consultants gave a report back. After the site visit, they gave recommendations and suggestions. The suggestions were more minor adjustments. Most of them had to do with just to look at the sequence of courses, especially with the mentored professional development. There's a mentored professional development 1, 2, and 3 if you looked inside the program. And I think the 1 was more of a planning part, and number 2 was more like making your proposal for your capstone project. And they decided they wanted them to revisit the time frame in which they put the mentor professional level number 2, in which TWU did respond to that, and they have added 3 one-hour courses, and I think I provided that to you as well as an attachment. I gave you another updated proposal that showed about
highlighted.
right
I sent it yesterday.
Yes, that
Okay.
was highlighted. That had all the different changes. That they propose to have 3 one-hour professional development courses that go along with the mentor professional development, allowed to enhance that part of the program. Dr. Candler, do you want to elaborate on that at all?
We appreciated very much the feedback of the reviewers on what we wanted to achieve, and what their suggestion did focus on an area that we felt was appropriate to change. We had kind of overloaded our faculty as mentors by expecting some delivery of some group content, some content that would probably be better delivered as an organized class. And the solution of adding that organized class did answer several of the reviewers' comments, and we really feel like we were stronger for that input.
The other part that the consultants commented on had to do with additional FTEs, not only of faculty, but of administrative staff. Texas Women's looked at those recommendations for the additional FTE, and they did give a rationale for not providing the FTE right now. And the reason being is if you in the proposal, Texas Women's University is deleting the Masters of Arts in Occupational Therapy and the certificate program, moving those programs and taking those resources and adding them to the new OTD program. So they feel that their current levels of FTE as far as faculty concerned would be able to adequately meet the needs for the OTD program. The other one was a recommendation to add some administrative FTEs to help with monitoring certain parts of the program, have a person that's going to coordinate the mentor development. One part coordinates the other part of the degree. They agreed with that, and it's inside your proposal with the edits that shows where they've documented that and increased funding and increased costs. It's all inside the proposal. I think those are the main ones.
Thanks. I want to just make a couple of comments, and the first comment and then open the floor to others too as well, because we've covered a number of different areas here. Just note a few things as I looked through the proposal that I thought were really noteworthy, and maybe there's one or two questions that I had too. One of the big questions that I look for in an online program is professional development for the faculty. And not only professional development in the area of course development and ensuring that courses are instructionally sound and learner-centered and all those things, but also that faculty have the training to be able to interact with students appropriately online, as well as, of course, in the face-to-face classroom. So that's one of the things that I look at. After looking through the proposal, I think that the training that's available to these faculty looks really, really good. I thought it was very, very excellent. So I wanted to commend the group on that. I know that TW has, like you said, Andrew, a history of doing distance education for a long period of time, and I think it's really evident from the proposal. I think they did a really, really good job. Let me just see one or two other things. I wanted to ask you: is training required for all faculty? I see training here in one of the in part of your program under faculty resource allocation. Actually, it's the major section is student interaction. But is training required for all faculty participating in the program in how to, number one, use Blackboard from a technical aspect, and two, in online pedagogy? Is that included now?
All faculty are very familiar with Blackboard because we use it in our face-to-face classes routinely. And we did add, as a criteria to become a member of the teaching faculty in the OTD, that there would need to be training in how to handle the mentoring aspect of the degree. So that's before a faculty member is even considered to teach in the degree, they're expected to engage in that training.
Okay.
This is Linda Murphy. I would say that at the university there is no requirement that faculty have to participate in the training. It's usually done at the departmental level. And I will say that our occupational therapy department has been very active in all of our different workshops and symposium that we offer. And it's not just on how to use Blackboard. We do focus on how do students learn, how can you effectively manage a classroom, and it's ongoing professional development. And they are very, very active. And they've even requested additional training just for their department that we have provided. So we're very pleased with where they are.
That's great. Thank you very much. That's a terrific program, and I really again it was fairly evident from your proposal that a lot of that was included. I just want to know about the requirement in those several different specialty areas. I also wanted to note that I saw a strong presence of instructional design in there as well. Of those individual online courses. And perhaps instructional design also influences the face-to-face course delivery as well, which I think is an important thing to do. I thought that the library resources looked particularly good, as you mentioned before. That's something I look for too, particularly for students who are off the campus, whatever it might be, who still have access to full library resources. Did you have a comment?
Well, yes, that was one of the things that stood out within the site visit. They had a very thorough library system and a way of delivering information to students. And they had different modes of doing it. Just online, they had chats, all kinds of ways for the students to interact with the library services. There was another part of the program that I thought was interesting, and I wanted to come back to one of the things you said as a recommendation. They have a portion of the program where students are required to go back for a required site visit, and it's part of the program right at the beginning.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yes, right at the beginning and right at the end. And one of the recommendations from the consultants was that they go back and maybe revisit, providing some assistance for students for housing for students having to come down for these required visits. TWU already has their entire. And tell me if I'm saying this wrong, Dr. Candler, but TWU's housing is already at capacity. So they didn't have any place that they could provide them to stay for the program. Am I saying that correctly?
That is correct. And on our Houston and Dallas campuses, there is no campus housing.
So they thought that might not have been a point that they could actually address right now at this point.
Maybe I'm thinking of something else, but wasn't there something in your proposal about providing discounted hotel accommodations or something like that? Did I see something about that, or am I thinking of something else? Am I off base?
What we have done to assist our students in the past is we will have conversations with local hotels and see if we can arrange a discount for TWU students. And we do that routinely. And we will continue to do that, but it's just as an anecdote, I can let you know that many students prefer to do that themselves. We've found that they're better bargain hunters on their own behalf.
Very good. Anything else, Andrew?
No, I'd like to open it up.
Well, one more. I have one more point, then let's open it up. Often the forgotten component of many plans, whether they be distance education plans or whatever the plans may be, is to really put a good, solid, at least as well as you can do right now, evaluation plan into place. Many times we don't spend as much time on evaluation as we need to, and to really end up seeing whether or not what we're intending to do is actually what we are doing, and whether we're doing it successfully. And then if we're doing it successfully, really certainly how do we know that we're doing it successfully? And that's where a good evaluation plan comes into play. I wanted to commend the folks at TWU because I saw what I thought was a very good evaluation plan in this proposal too. So I just wanted to make note of that as well. I thought they did a really good job of that in various different aspects of evaluation. With that, we open it up. Are there any other comments that anyone would like to have about this proposal? Nothing from anyone?
I have a. Sorry, go ahead. The question, and I had a question about the staff reallocation is going to happen by closing the MA program. So how many students do you have in the MA program right now? Because you obviously have to have a teach-out agreement. So you need to get those students graduated before you can shut programs down. So how many students do you have in the MA program, and what's the phase-out plan?
The School of Occupational Therapy was proactive in its planning for the OTD, and the MA has been phasing out. And so at this time, the MA is phased out. What we, in our argument in terms of the FTE, was the point that we are now operating with vacancies on the faculty. And with those vacancies filled, it will be able to deliver this program appropriately.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I have a question. Since this is learning technologies, your section on the use of distance technologies is somewhat short. Can you just go and explain to us exactly how that works with the combination of the hybrid format and the face-to-face and web-based instruction? And also, because your classes are organized to be 12 contact hours, just talk a little bit more about how you use the technology and how you will be actually teaching.
Okay. I'm trying to understand the scope of your question. Forgive me for the delay. So the curriculum is designed for the part-time student. A student would take 6 to 7 credit hours per semester. Most of those semesters, half of those credit hours are in organized courses, and the other half is what we are terming our mentored professional development strand. So the students would probably get assignments at the very start of the semester that were online to orient them to the course and to get some basic knowledge or content delivered. And then they come to meet on campus. In the on-campus and the online courses, that's where you have your face-to-face dialogue and that building that scholarly community and within in the coursework. We've found that those face-to-face touches are really critical. They really add that level of human communication that you need for this type of intellectual work. The students then return home, and the rest of the content is delivered online, just through Blackboard and through various measures. Usually there is, as in doctoral work, a central applied project within each organized course that kind of pulls everything together with resources being made available online throughout the semester. You typically, at least in our PhD program, and again we're kind of mirroring that program, the instructor has voice-to-voice contact with the students at least every 3 weeks or so. Again, that brings people together on the same page and adds that community. And then near the end of the semester, we meet again face-to-face, and often that time is spent in students sharing their learning, presenting their projects, commenting on one another's projects, and we finish that piece. What we would do is follow that same type of thing with our mentored part, so that students would be on campus for the organized course, and at that time they could meet face-to-face with their mentor. This allows them to really communicate deeply about designing their project, their final doctoral project, the capstone, and then contact would then again continue using video conferencing or telephone or whatever means through. So that's kind of how we envision it happening. It's been a smooth blend within the PhD program of distance contact and face-to-face contact. And we've found both really important as a blend to the program.
In terms of the online delivery, our faculty have access to many different tools. For instance, during a normal Blackboard, we use Blackboard, and during a normal Blackboard course, you always have discussion boards, you always have wikis and blogs. They also have the use of Collaborate, which is a web conferencing tool. It just depends on the type of content they're trying to deliver at the time. And then when we bring them on campus, we try to focus on active learning, a lot of interaction, as opposed to content delivery.
And how many times during the course of the entire program will they be face-to-face?
It's 10 times.
there other questions?
I had a question as far as the enrollment projections and referring back to the graduates. You stated in your proposal that they had 12 students and that it's 5 semesters over 6 years, but they do have an opportunity to come in and out of the program depending on life situations, I guess. Could you address what your experience has been as far as that happening in your programs currently?
In the School of Occupational Therapy, we're very accustomed to dealing with a cohort. Our master's level, entry level program is definitely a cohort model, and we have to rely on accreditation standards that say they need to complete it within a certain time frame. And so students they need to stay in that cohort. We would encourage a cohort type approach to our students in the OTD. One strong reason for that is you don't just learn from your teachers. We are looking for our students to learn from their peers. They're going to create a network of contacts that, hopefully will last beyond the granting of the degree. And we do want that to happen. We see this as building scholarly communities. We do understand that life circumstances will drop some students out of the sequence, and we will, of course, accommodate for that, but we will be primarily letting students know up front that the expectations are that they will come in as a class, participate and learn as a class, and hopefully exit as a class.
This is very similar to what's going on in our PhD program, which is a hybrid model as well.
Yes, our PhD students do complete their didactic coursework as a group, and then they start to scatter out into dissertation. But what we have found, to our pleasant surprise, is that they still contact one another. And we have had several groups that ask us, can we reserve a room? We're going to come to campus even though we don't have an organized class, because we want to, pool our resources in working on our dissertation work and learn from one another still.
Do we have any other questions or comments from the Ltac folks? Anything from anyone?
I had one quick question.
Oh, we have one.
Regarding, I understand, I was trying to figure out if there were any specific technology learning outcomes. I see how the technology is facilitating the instruction, but I'm wondering if I couldn't tell if there was if they would learn how to facilitate occupational therapy through the technologies, if that was part of one of their outcomes.
I would say only very indirectly, in that we do have a course that's directed toward pedagogy and teaching, and certainly using technology in teaching is predominant today.
Hi, this is Bill Robertson, and I had a question just to follow up on what Daniel was asking. You talked about your cohort and that you're recommending the 6 to 7 hours a semester. You said you would address perhaps the person that gets out of the sequence, try to keep them in the cohort, and I understand that. I guess my question was a little bit on the progression and the coursework by semester. Was if someone does get out of step, first off, are there prerequisites along the way which might impact that part-time student, and is there any kind of predictive course carousel that you have beyond this? So, meaning, is this how it's replicated through each cohort? So if a cohort enters in the fall or in the spring or whatever, you're kind of repeating, if you will, the entry points for that, so that carousel of courses could be predictive for the student.
We are looking to admit in the fall only at this time. So the student that stepped out, we would probably encourage to come back in the sequence during the year. The trick for them stepping out is that the organized courses content is somewhat matched to what we want them to be engaged in with their mentored professional development piece. So perhaps we need to build more models and forecast better, perhaps, what happens when a student steps out.
I guess I'm not really implying that. I'm just, wondering about that because you're defining it as a program for 6 to 7 hours a semester for the focus on the working professional. My experience is that working professional may be capped out at 3 hours a semester. And so I think that's just something, possibly to think about in terms of your course offerings. And I agree having cohort-based one term, moving in every fall or something like that makes a lot of sense. I'm just thinking about that in terms of, an online, you could in a sense, repeat this quicker than slower, So I'm just trying to think about it in terms of its flexibility, which I think is one of the features of an online program.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? No? Okay, Andrew, what we normally do, are there any other comments from the folks at TWU or from other members of the Ltac on the phone also? I just want to open it up to them as well. Okay. If not, I think what we normally do here is that we say thank you to the folks from the proposing institution. Their phone connection will be disconnected. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which would be consideration of this proposal.
Correct.
We're going to have a discussion about it here after we get off the phone with y'all, and then we'll vote on it, and we'll let you know what's going on. Is that appropriate?
That's appropriate.
Okay.
I did want to say what we're going to be, when we discuss, we'll be discussing whether or not to give a recommendation to the board as whether or not it should be approved as far as the distance ed component for the doctoral program.
Right. The board actually does the approval. We make the recommendation.
We make the recommendation. Correct. Right. I want to say thank you to TWU and the administration, Dr. Candler, Dr. LaFleur, Dr. Murphy. Thank you very much. It's been for your patience. It's been a long process, but they've been very, very accommodating and throughout the entire process. And I want to thank you for being in on the call this morning. As Steve said, we will now disconnect your line.
Dr. Loftus, if you would allow me to say thank you, and for the external reviewers and the process or exercise we went through, we found that at the university to be quite informing. It even gave us an opportunity to visit things that maybe we had not considered. We found it a very, very productive exercise, and we appreciate your office in processing this proposal as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, and we'll be voting soon. I will be back with you.
Thank you.
You have a good day.
Thank you, Dr. Loftus.
Thanks. Do we disconnect? Oh, it sounds like they're already doing it right now. Okay.
All right.
I heard that confirmation beep. Shall we move ahead to discussion?
Discussion.
Okay. I can just go ahead. Is there any discussion about this? Does anyone want to make any comments about any of the points that we made? Anyone have any reservations or concerns? Any commendations? Anything to talk about before we vote on it? Patrick.
I have a process question, and I don't think we can do anything about it this time, but given that we are streamed live, what is the point in having the parties that presented disconnected?
That's a good point.
Good point.
That's a good question. I didn't think
So
of that.
maybe we could revisit that next time, but it just seemed odd to me.
Of course, right, they just logged in. Hi, folks. Right.
Good point.
Of course, that would be moot if we didn't have any discussion, too, at the same time. Yeah.
This
So,
is executive session.
yes, sure.
Barry, and I have a kind of a follow-up question to that. Andrew, I just want to double-check that. So is it a new process to have a site visit for doctoral proposals? And if so, I mean, will that be for future as well? And so these individuals that go to the proposing institution, is that going to be part of the process?
There's two different approvals, the way I'm seeing it. There's one for an existing program, which you don't have to have a site visit. They already have it. And we're looking at a program that would just be changing modality. So that will come in front of us. That's one way. That doesn't really require a site visit for that one. The second one is a new program, which this one is new. So basically they're doing two approvals at the same time. They're doing the approval for the program itself and the approval for the doctoral portion. The distance ed doctoral portion. So since we were doing a new program, that has to go through the review of the staff, evaluation by staff, then a site visit to see if they have everything they need, according to the consultants. That's why we had the site visit in this particular case. Now, if they're just changing modalities, that's a different story. But since this is new, there's not one in the state of Texas or any adjacent states. And I'm not sure, do we all understand the difference between this one, the OTD, and the PhD? The OTD is more of a practice-based, clinical, really it's a leadership clinical-based program, where the PhD is the research-based. And they already had the PhD on site. However, since this was a little bit different, we decided that a site visit would be appropriate, even though they're the same degree, OTD. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. Same field, occupational therapy, I should say that. Same field, occupational therapy. Since they had a little bit different focus, we had an actual site visit. If they're very, very similar programs, there's a time sometimes when we can have a desk review, because they're real close. You already have a PhD in it. You would have a PhD in something very, very similar that's different. But in this case, there's enough difference that we needed a site visit.
You said this is the first one in the state here?
First one in the state.
Can you say again who the three institutions were that came in to view them?
It was University of Washington University of St. Louis, Virginia Commonwealth, University of Utah.
And they have this same degree?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
I think that was probably extremely valuable for TWU to have that. So I think it was very good to have those external reviewers come in and help them. I think that's huge. Yeah. So yay, good idea.
And what I saw from the site visit as well is that it wasn't more of a presentation by TWU. It was a dialogue between the consultants and the institution, where they actually gave ideas back and forth to each other and saying, look, this is what you ought to look for in the future. We've already had this situation happen with us. This is what you ought to plan for. Something that you ought to adjust, maybe might need to adjust to accommodate certain aspects of the program. So it was real profitable and beneficial for both of them.
Interactive, it sounds like. Too.
Yes, it was.
I was just going to follow up on a comment Bill made and even to Pam's comment earlier. At Midwestern, we've been doing a master's in radiology since the 70s. And it's very much this kind of model where most of it is online, and then they make some visits to campus. And it's very occupational and specific in nature, just like this one would be. And we found the students just don't drop out. I don't know if it's the level of skill and the profession that they've already attained, but they make the trips. We have them come in from Saudi Arabia. The commitment level is incredible. If it gives you any comfort at all, they tend to move through as a cohort, and they just don't stop unless it's something catastrophic. And those weekend visits prove to be invaluable to the program. It takes care of everything you cannot do online, and it's been really successful. So I think it's a great plan they're going forward with.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't. I think the cohort numbers are like they want 12 a year, so I think that's also very manageable.
Yeah.
In that sense, with people coming in and you know, I didn't get a real, and they had some attrition built into their model, you know, which was part of that too, and I didn't get a good sense for the prerequisites, but I did get the point that if you fell out of step, you needed to get back into step quickly, right? You know, so in some ways, having sort of that predictive course carousel is outside of what they've already provided is not that big a deal to me personally, because the numbers aren't huge. You know, they're not trying to do hundreds of students; they're doing 12 a year. So I mean, I could see that, and I think I've seen other, not so much in this field, but let's say ed leadership kinds of models that would fall into this kind of minimal face-to-face is what I would call it, not fully online. So that, you know, I felt satisfied with it. I just was following up with Daniel, because I know that, people who enter a cohort, their intention is always to stick in, but I was wondering what part-time was really my question. I didn't ask them, but it was like they defined it as 6 to 7, and whenever I hear part-time for a doctoral student, I think 3. So that's all I was kind of getting at. But thank you, Pam.
And that did come up within our review, because according to the proposal, they could take up to 18 hours a year, which is, we were wondering, is that part-time? But I thought it was a full-time doctoral student, so we were looking at the part-time part when they put it in the proposal, and we took that under review. I want to also say that this was also as I was going through the process, I was being mentored. I want to say thank you to Chris Fowler, one of my colleagues, who was also with me with the site visit and went with me through this entire process. She was instrumental in getting the consultants and showing me how this process works, but it did work very well. It was very, very well organized by TWU as well. And the last thing I wanted to comment on was, I think I heard someone say about student interaction as far as the online component. How do they?
Came up a couple of times.
Yes. Yeah. There was a part of the site visit where we had doctoral programs in the PhD program, doctoral students in the PhD program, and were going to give interviews or talk with the consultants. They were so comfortable with each other, you would think that they would be neighbors, but they were from far distant parts of the state, and you could tell that their interaction was ongoing and frequent from the interview that we had with the consultants. So I don't think that's a issue that's plaguing anything in this program at all. They're doing quite well on that part.
Is there another committee, though, that is looking at this in the recommendation process from the curriculum side, or is this the only committee that's looking at? Because, our charge is the learning technologies. Since this is a brand new program in the state, is there anybody else looking at that issue?
Let me see. You're talking, say that again.
Well, since this is a brand new program in the state, is there anybody else at the coordinating board that is looking at the curriculum side of this, or are we approving both sides? Because you did say it's kind of since this is not a on-ground program ramping up into online, it's kind of a two-part. Are we doing both parts?
Yeah, the staff goes through the entire program as far as curriculum, which is inside what courses, I should say. Okay. What courses comprise the program. Okay. We look at the job market demand. We look at all parts of it inside our evaluation system. So basically what we're doing now is just doing the approval, or say recommending whether or not we want to approve the distance ed part, but then it still goes in front of the board as just a doctoral program itself.
Okay. I think my question is, if this were an on-ground program, who from the coordinating board would have looked at it? Would that have been you? Because we wouldn't have had any part of that if it were, fully on ground. So
correct.
Okay.
Right. We will look at all the.
And so the normal approval process for that would have just been coordinating board staff approval. You don't have another committee at the coordinating board level looking at this. Okay. Just want to know.
Plus the 3-person review team.
Yeah.
Plus
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Who's, I would think, be looking at the curriculum too.
Yeah.
James, do you?
Sorry, you're asking about the different components of review, and yes, Andrew's correct that the staff provide an overall evaluation of a new program. Now, you seem more specifically interested in the fact that this is a new program to the state and who's been looking at the curriculum. That's the function of these 3 consultants. They provide the expertise in the field that we staff cannot, because obviously we can't staff enough people here to be experts in every field of academic endeavor. So they're providing that level of review. And then, as Andrew mentioned, the board gives final approval for all new doctoral programs, except in very special cases where they sometimes delegate that to the commissioner. So that's the order of review, and that's why, as Andrew mentioned before, there's pretty much always outside consultants employed. It's either going to be 3 consultants for a site visit or 1 outside consultant for a desk review, because we need that insight from an expert in the field, which we cannot usually provide ourselves.
Thank you.
But would we see this from an already existing program that is just beginning to offer it on distance education, online, the curricular part of it?
Right. No, because as Andrew mentioned, what you're being asked to look at is the technology, the distance ed part of it. The curriculum and the program itself have already been approved. It's already been operating, so there's no need to go through and look at the curriculum because we're assuming that the faculty are already comfortable with that. They've already been offering it for a while. Right. So all we need to do is to make sure that the necessary social and technological pieces that you need in an online program to make it successful are there.
Very good. Okay, thanks.
I just had a clarification from something you said at the very beginning about faculty professional development. Was I correct in hearing that it's not required, it's just offered? And also, I noticed that they are a QM school, but the rubric's not required, the course review's not required, it's all voluntary?
That's kind of the impression that I got, too, from the response that we got.
Okay.
My question was, is specific faculty training not only in Blackboard, but also in online pedagogy, as well as assistance in actual online course design. The third part not required, but the first two parts, yes. The teaching online and the pedagogy part of it particularly, and the training of the technology itself. And it appeared as though from the response that it was not fully required. However, they followed up by saying, and I don't want to speak for them at this point, but they followed up by saying that just about every one of their faculty, if not all of their faculty, already have experience in teaching using Blackboard. Now, how they got that experience and how they ramped up to whatever level of expertise they have right now, I don't know.
Okay.
So I had that same concern. Maybe we should have followed up.
It looks
in
like it's a very deep training program. They're
It to me too.
But at the same time, I'm saying, well, what about that one faculty member who says,
right, who might be,
I know this,
right.
I don't need...
Or who might be thrust into a situation where they might be having to use Blackboard significantly in their teaching of that
Right.
particular course and not have that training.
In particular, with the hybrid modality, it's not training that you may have had for a fully online course is still very, especially pedagogically, very different from a hybrid. And I was just clarifying that.
I did write down that she said it's not required at the university level, but it is required at the department level.
I thought you said that the departments were. You may be right. You're probably right. I thought you
For
said
some
the
reason, I
departments were
wrote
taking
it
care
down
of that.
because it's a
That's the way she put it.
discussion at our university.
Yeah.
They basically
Okay.
said that it's required at the department level, but the second piece that I think they said also was that to be part of the faculty for this particular program, they were required to go through training.
Okay.
Just for this program.
I
So
didn't
for
get
the
that,
OPT
but
program, yeah.
that's good to know.
The other part of this, though, is that even though this is a new program, they already have a PhD program online, too. So I would suspect many of these faculty will be teaching in both programs. So although that's nothing we are to consider, it's the reality that most of these faculty probably have had experience in that environment. And for those that don't, they're going to be supported by other faculty that do. So I think that's a positive for them.
And I found that to be true in our site visit, exactly what you said. The faculty are going to be in both.
Steve, I had another process question. Previously, we had an online doctoral degree subcommittee that would intensely kind of study the proposals and then make a recommendation to this group, which was still encouraged to review them and ask questions. But I wondered if we'll continue to do that and reform that group, or if that's something may have been completely unnecessary in this particular instance because of the dual approval process and the deep dive that was being done with staff and curricular peer reviewers. But I just wondered about that.
And that is going to be on my part. The rule says that the Ltac committee is the one that provides the recommendation. We do have a standing subcommittee for doctoral program approval reviews, online, or distance ed, distance ed programs. Since the last time we met, we've had people rotate off the committee, so the committee had sort of, it wrote it away. So therefore, what we did, since the rule says that the Ltac just needs to be presented to Ltac, and Ltac needs to make a recommendation. Since we didn't really have an intact process. That's why I sent it to the Ltac as a whole in this particular instance. And then from this meeting today, we're going to go ahead and reform our standing committee on distance doctoral program approvals.
That's great. Thank you for that clarification.
I'll just comment, I think that's really a good idea if it's reinstated, though, because this is a lot of responsibility entrusted to this group to look at these doctoral programs. On the flip side, though, like Pam said, the students that are coming in are probably going to be your most likely to complete. I mean, they're probably the least at-risk students that we have in all of our programs, certainly at the associate's and bachelor's degree level. Students are probably more at risk, but still, we want to make sure that the program is doing what it needs to do. So I would hope that we could reinstate that prior committee approval like Patrick suggested.
And, as we go on through the meeting, I was going to say I would like the members to think about that if you would like to be part of this. Let's just reform a new committee, get the committee all together, and we can talk about what the charge for that particular committee would be as we go through the day.
Any final questions or comments? Calling the question. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
They can. Okay. Well, then what we'll do is, a show of hands here and then a verbal vote from those that are listening in. All in favor at those present, show of hands. Okay, verbal vote from our those joining us.
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, it's passed unanimously. This program has been approved from this committee, and looking at the proposal for the distance education piece.
So if TWU is still listening in, congratulations to them. As Patrick pointed out.
And if they're not listening in, they were pretty confident.
Yeah, that's true, too.
A strong program. Good. Congratulations. Okay.
Well, I was going to say we have one more item prior to on the agenda prior to breaking for lunch, and that is something that Pam is going to discuss. Pam, I know, has been very involved in the state reciprocity agreement issues that have been going on for the last couple of years. She's involved in a nationwide committee that is looking at this. There's been a lot of stops and starts. There's been a lot of issues related to authorization of distance education students taking courses from other states into Texas, and obviously the reciprocity of that for all others and the impact of all other states as well. So, Pam, I'm going to turn it over to you for a summary.
Okay. Interesting for us at the state of Texas, the person that is heading up the National Advisory Committee for the SARA program, and SARA stands for the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement. The person heading that up is Marshall Hill, who has now moved to Boulder and is in charge of this nationwide voluntary process for getting institutions at the post-secondary level to work together in getting and meeting state requirements for institutions that want to offer online and distance program to students that are residing in another state. For many, many years, this was happening and nobody was really looking at it. The Department of Ed raised the issue several years ago about whether institutions really were in compliance, not just with their home state, but with those states in which other students were living. So this was going on for a long time. Nobody was asking the question. Well, once the Department of Ed raised the question and said all institutions must be in compliance, therefore now institutions must be in compliance with the rules set up by all the other states in which your students might be taking courses or programs. Every state operates differently. Some states have no processes, no fees, just come on in and work with your students. Other states have a very detailed processes you have to go through and an expensive price tag attached to all of that. So looking at all 50 states and territories, this was a really difficult thing to get through, and it was really going to hurt most institutions, and surely it would hurt students if they couldn't take the online programs from the institutions where they would like to be attending. So there was, first of all, a commission that was set up on the national basis where we really just looked at the issues, and in fact there were 3 different groups looking at this issue. The final commission that was pulled together, I happened to serve on that commission, really looked at what is a process going through and could we work with the 3 other groups nationally that were working on this issue and kind of come together with one voice and approach the process and how we were going to deal with this. Last summer there was a new commission, and it's called NC-SARA, which is the National Commission for the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement. And then it is broken down by regions. We are in SREB, so there is an S-SARA, which is the Southern Region SARA. There's an Midwestern region, and WICHE, which is the West, is one of the regions. And so there are 4 regions. The intent of all this is to get the regions to work with the states to work with the regions, and then the regions to work with one another and kind of overcome this kind of messy situation that is out there. The regionals are involved, the states are involved, universities, community colleges, and the regional areas. So it's well represented by a variety of people from across the country, as well as some proprietary schools are on there. So there's a national commission, and the work is happening at multiple levels. Again, it happens within the state, it happens within the region, and then if we go with the region, and then the region works with all the other regions, it'll eventually come together. They're guessing, though, that this could take several years for this to happen. In the meantime, institutions are supposed to continue to seek approval from all the other states in which they are operating. And basically, if we're trying to get through that process, that's what they're looking for. But so it's kind of working on a number of different levels. It is complex, but the commission that's being head by Marshall Hill, he's well representing the group since he has worked at a state. He's worked with the state of Texas, he's worked with the state of Nebraska, and now he's working with the national issue. And Marshall's very eloquent in being able to express the needs at all levels, and he is extremely deep in his understanding of the complexities of all of this. So the National Council was formed last summer. We have had one meeting. It was this fall in Washington. The second meeting will be in May in Chicago, and we will continue to work on this. You're probably all familiar with this issue, and there are a lot of questions. I continually get asked, well, what do we do in the meantime? Well, I think, it's where I said, you have to be showing due diligence that you are trying to meet the state needs, but at the same time, we are going to be working with our state. And it is a interesting issue because it is something where the states really are the entities we must deal with the most, because the states are in charge of consumer protection of their own students in that state. The way this is going to roll out is that if there is a student complaint, say there's an institution here in Texas, you're only enrolling a student from the state of Ohio, that student has a complaint, that student can take it to the region that is covering Ohio, they come to us, and we have to eventually answer the questions and deal with that student complaint. But this also is for consumer protection, making sure that there is a way to deal with that institution that's in another state. So it is providing a lot of pathways for communication, solving problems, and overcoming obstacles. So it's a grand plan, and I might let Andrew talk about anything that the conversations or the thoughts that we have had at the state level about actually joining the S-SARA program.
Well, Andrew doesn't No. What I did know, I know that we're still part of the SREB, and the SREB is going to be working, as far as I understand, with the state reciprocity agreements nationally. I just know that the state reciprocity agreement is a very hot topic right now within the state of Texas, and we're trying to make sure that I think it's more of a compliance act. Oh, there we are. Thank you, Stacy.
Absolutely. An excellent question, and it is under discussion amongst leadership here at the agency. So we are very interested in participating, and we'll follow up with you all to let you know how that's going to roll out here. I wish I could tell you more than that.
Yeah, I mean, the institutions are really dependent on how the state responds to this, and if it is going to be the coordinating board, how that happens too. I will say that there is a financial backing or a process for paying for all of this, because someone has to pay for the national level, someone is going to be paying for the regional level support. Someone may have to pay for the state level support. But if an institution decides to be part of NC-SARA, there will be a set of fees established to coordinate the process of financial system data collection, record keeping. They're trying to keep that cost down as low as they can, but the established fees that they are looking at instituting are $2,000 a year for institutions with fewer than 2,500 FTE, $4,000 per year for institutions that have between 2,500 and just under 10,000 student FTE, and $6,000 per year for institutions with 10,000 FTE or greater. So that is the process that is being set up. And that may sound like it's a lot of money, but institutions that really have gone all out to get full approval from all the states, like Western Governors University and some of the other ones, they have spent, I know Bob Mendenhall, who's president of WGU nationally, has said they put at least $150,000 into this because there is the ongoing issue of keeping up with all the changing state regulations, paying those state fees for those states that have the fees. So there really is complexity in this, and we have to be in compliance. So your choice is either stop offering any student enrollments outside the state if there is, that's one solution. Another would be paying the fees to do it individually, and then the last one would be paying the fees to do it collectively and supporting the national level. And I don't know where the state's going to come up on all this, but I do know that I was at a meeting in Indianapolis last April, and some of the questions had is, who would do this at the coordinating board? How would that be funded? Where does that come from? So those are, I assume, are the ongoing issues that you are discussing, and we'll come up with some kind of solution that you will be presenting to the state, to the institutions. I'll just say another thing, too. Just a few weeks ago, there was a meeting in Atlanta for all of the institutions who wanted to come and hear what's being discussed at the regional level discussed. And was the state there for that?
Yes. In fact, I'm sure you all know we have a new assistant commissioner. Rex Peoples joined us in December, and he attended that meeting. And he is working on this issue, and we'll hopefully have something resolved within the next month or two, I anticipate. So I do anticipate that we'll move positively forward on it.
Well, I know Marshall Hill has volunteered whatever he can, whatever help he can, to explain this from his new position, functioning at the national level, and whatever he can do for the state of Texas. But his background that makes him so very well qualified to do his job now has included chairing this committee a number of years ago. So,
well, I personally think the world of Marshall Hill, so since I worked for him for about 7 years, that's great. So it's heartening to know that he is leading this effort nationally. It's great. Thanks.
Questions? Yeah.
This is Sherry, and one of my questions would be, we have had inquiries from our members, our system members, institutions, and the question is, should the A&M system be more active in working with the state authorization as a system? Right now, the institutions are doing this themselves. So the question from the institutions is, should that come from the system level, similar to, is University of Texas still doing that? And so that's one of the questions that has been posed, and I don't know a good answer.
Well, in Dallas, we have 7 individually accredited community colleges, and my office, which is more of a district-wide office, is doing all of the legwork on behalf of all of our colleges. Now, when we get into it, we're going to have to decide, then does each college enroll students from out of state? Therefore, we would have to pay whatever that fee is according to the FTE per college. And I know this is how other systems are looking at this too. We may end up coming up with only one of our colleges will really try to serve students out of state. Now, I don't know that the A&M system would go that route, but I think that nationally this is an issue that is being dealt with in a lot of other states. Who's really coordinating this for system offices, and then how we really implement it. Community colleges in particular have, and I've had this concern expressed to me, is that this may not sound like a lot of money, but to them it would be a lot of money. So they are concerned about the cost that's involved. So all of these things are being looked at. I think the issue of cost was probably more of a concern to small institutions than large institutions. But the initial approach was everybody was going to pay the same thing. So now they've come back with kind of a graduated, segmented FTE approach, so that if you don't have that many students, you're not paying the same thing as the University of Texas would pay. So,
and would these fees take the place of the fees that you pay to each individual state?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah, because that's the thing, is that you're either going to have to do this individually, not play, or participate with this.
Well, and the problem we've had with the SREB is they had like 11 states participate in the reciprocity, but then if you busted the physical presence definition, you were kind of out on your own again. So is this going to be an all-inclusive reciprocity agreement to where it includes issues of physical presence?
They have really gone back to look at defining what physical presence is. And there's a lot of criteria there, but everybody that sits on the NC Sarah panel is in distance education. We were all comfortable with what physical presence meant. Sometimes physical presence meant if you're advertising online in another state. Well, that doesn't make any sense.
I don't know how they're going to ever get it pared down for every state to agree.
Well, they have, and this is all voluntary. So yes, that's true. That's one of the complicated parts of all of this. But I think the kind of the momentum from the institutions in the states is, we really do want to both protect the students in our states, but also give students the option to go where they need to go. What's interesting is every state wants to make sure that they regulate who's coming into your state, but we're not as interested in being regulated outside the state. But that's why, every state is concerned about their own, students and consumer protection. So it is a complex issue, and the discussions have been kind of swirling for a couple years, but that's where 3 different groups working together came together to agree on both the direction for this national council, and it's National Council for State Authorization or Reciprocity Agreements. And so they came together on both the direction of this and also who was on the final committee, because each of the groups that were working on this got a chance to say, we want this person on this person. And some of the people continued from the other commissions that were out there working on this issue, and some are brand new. But the players are all very strong, well represented, and I think it's going to be the very best solution we can come up with. It just won't happen quickly.
I have a follow-up question as well. You said that your office is handling that effort for your group. Tell me just a time frame. In other words, is it full-time, that someone's got to be dedicated to this?
We've really looked at the low-hanging fruit. Let's go after the states that don't have very many regulations and get approval there first. Okay. And then go after the states where we have more out-of-state students and try to get that figured. There are some states that for us, we don't have that many students there, or there are some states that just seem impossible to deal with, and I think a lot of people are just writing them off as well. So it is interesting, though. New York was going to be one of the difficult states. Well, I will be in New York City next week and meeting with the SUNY Learning Network, and SUNY is bringing Marshall Hill in to talk about how New York can play. So even those states where there's been a problem, they're at least really looking at this issue, trying to figure it out. Now, what we had to do on a system level is, even though we're going out on behalf of our colleges, we still have to get each of our colleges to sign agreements with the state. So
I guess what I'm really...
And who's doing it? It is being done by one person who already has a full-time job. This was an add-on, and that's how she's approaching it, though, going after the easy stuff first. And when we get to the point where it's a lot of work, we'll deal with that.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is if the system had to consider hiring someone, would it be a full-time effort? It sounds like more than full-time, so...
Yes,
okay.
yeah. And some institutions have already done that. Some institutions have already done all the work. They don't need this NC SARA immediately, but on an ongoing basis, this will solve everybody's problem, because even if you get the issue resolved one time and Arkansas comes back and changes their rules, and you would have to go back and get reapproved by Arkansas. So it's a moving target if you try to do it on your own.
The WCET did a survey, and the most popular staffing was 0.5, but up to 1.5.
The system did when the UT system got blanket approvals for the schools. It took them about half an FTE to get that done. Yeah, they drafted letters and we sent it out to everybody. I wonder if it's useful to share the draft reciprocal agreement right now. I don't know if everybody in the committee has seen that. What do you think, Pam? Because
I think it'd be fine. Yeah, I mean.
So maybe I'll send that off too, because
sure.
I served on the large group which looked at the nitty-gritty of everything. So while you were at the commission,
yeah.
I think maybe Steve, you were on that group too, weren't you? The APLU.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, I was in the APLU group. So I have the reciprocity agreement. Maybe I'll share that with Cindy, and we can send it off to the committee members.
I've got a nice 3-pager here that summarizes a lot of the issues, too, that for those that want to read the entire document, it's there. Marshall is continually working on this, too, though, because we are getting emails and saying, I want to make this change, and we can't afford to wait till we meet again in May. Can we make this change? So it is still moving forward, even though the commission only meets a couple times a year.
Does he have a blog that you...
I don't know that he does yet. That's a good question to ask. Yeah, and really, Marshall's working with WCET. I mean, he's right there in Boulder with WCET. Yes, you are. Yeah, Russ Poulin is very involved with this. Russ is at WCET, and so he is definitely an expert on that. And WCET, it's really WICHE that has hired the NC SARA. WICHE was asked to carry forth the implementation of it. The commission I was on before was kind of setting up the outline for how we needed to proceed. WICHE has been charged with implementing it, and that's who hired Marshall. So Marshall moved from Nebraska to Boulder to be right with WICHE. So it's very well connected. The other person that is serving on the commission is Belle Wieland. So she is there. She's very involved, very active voice as usual about where we ought to be going with this. But it's got attention from all different aspects. And actually, I think Marshall's really excited about the speed and the enthusiasm at which this is progressing. So it might not be as long to get implemented. It probably will be. It'll still be long to get it implemented. But in terms of opposition, there's not that many opposition. And even when there's opposition, it's optimistic opposition to try to figure this out on behalf of students and institutions. So, interesting.
Pam? I had a couple of questions, also a couple comments. One, WCET, which is the WICHE Consortium for Educational Technology. We referred to the acronym a couple times. For those of you who haven't heard about it, go check them out. UNT is a member. A lot of other institutions probably are too, but great resource on not just the state authorization issue, but lots of other issues too. So check them out. In a recent, and this may have been the same session that you went to back in January, on state authorization, one of the questions that came up in the discussion afterwards was, well, how quickly is this likely to move? How many states will be online soon? And the estimate was that there would be 20 states by fall 2014 that would be participating nationally through their regional group, and then 40 states by next fall. So we're still 18 months away from having a majority of states that are able to participate. My interest is that Texas is sooner rather than later. So if there is some action that we could take in our advisory capacity here to bolster the efforts that Rex is already in the midst of to accelerate that process in any way possible, it would be a great savings in both personnel, talent, and finance for this to happen for us sooner. And it's not possible for us as institutions to do anything or join unless the state of Texas joins. So if that's possible to entertain at least that discussion, I'd like to recommend that.
Is it possible that, following up on what Patrick said, is it possible for this group today to provide, even though it's not on the agenda, maybe not something officially discussed, to provide an endorsement of some kind to move forward?
Absolutely. You can provide that to staff, and we'll carry that back.
Encourage the coordinating board to
absolutely.
move
We
as fast
hear
as
you loud and
possibly
clear,
can.
and it sounds like you're all on the same page, and I appreciate that, and I know that we'll be relying on your expertise as we move down the road as well, so that we make sure we're considering all the things we need to.
No, I think what Pam was saying, the proposal sounds very, very reasonable. It sounds very inviting. It certainly reduces a lot of the headaches and hassles that every college in this state and many colleges around the country have been going through in this process. So yes, we would absolutely, I'll speak for everybody at this particular time, but we'd absolutely encourage you and endorse that you move forward as quickly as possible with participating with this on a statewide.
Absolutely, because we really can't do anything till we know which game we're playing. You know, we're either supporting the state or we're going after this on our own. So
it's very helpful for us to hear that as well, that you all are all looking at this and moving forward in some ways, but would rather do it jointly. It's cost saving. It's more efficient. It will provide everyone with clarity on how to participate and how to go forward. So
well, and Pam and
absolutely.
Patrick can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think part of the worry and the urgency is the Department of Education putting the Title IV penalty back in. I know a few universities have already gotten in trouble with other states. Luckily, there has not been, to my knowledge, a financial penalty, but if Title IV money were attached to it, there could have been with the financial aid. So it's very worrisome for small universities that are just doing, trying to survive until we get some help.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
I would like
great.
to ask Andrew to make sure that we put that endorsement or whatever we want to call what we just discussed in the minutes. Make sure it's reflected in the minutes.
We have it reflected. In fact, I wrote down Ltac recommendation: move quickly on Sarah. Sounds accommodating and cost efficient.
Right. Very good. Any other comments on that?
No, thank you for bringing that.
Really interesting.
Can I ask one question? When you said that you listed a list of costs depending on the number of students, where is that money paid to?
It will be going to NC Stara for that piece because they've got the national infrastructure to keep going. And I mean, someone's got to have to pay for the state too, and I don't know how that's going to happen, but I'm going to guess that's part of what you're having to look at and how that happens. The SREB is working on this already, and they've got their person, Mary Larson. Yeah, she's the one that's pulling all this together at that level.
11 states already.
Yeah. 11 states. So that's going. Marshall just spoke last week at the ITC meeting in Orlando, which is the Instructional Technology Council, which is an affiliate council of the American Association of Community Colleges. Almost any of the big distance learning programs, Newton, which is the National University of Technology Council Sloan, ITC, WCET, USGLA. This is being discussed at all of those, and so if you are going to any of those conferences, I recommend you go to the session to listen to this. But Marshall was one of the keynote speakers last week in Orlando at the ITC conference, and this is where he was announcing what these rates were going to be. So again, it is a moving issue. It is trying to be resolved, but because it's got so many players, and I mean, starting just with the 50 states and the regionals and the institutions and the accrediting agencies, there's a lot of people that have to be satisfied. But anyway, we appreciate anything the state can do for us to resolve this as quickly as possible, because in the event the state wouldn't want to do this, somehow we got to figure out how to get it done. So,
well, we'd have to go back to doing it individually in all probability, which is not the direction. That's where we started.
Yeah, we got to.
We have to continue doing it individually in case this doesn't pan out.
So, continue on the track that we are right now with the, as it says, in the good faith effort to do that.
And it's expensive.
It is expensive.
Yes.
Both in time and actual outlays of capital to pay registration
and
fees.
the ongoing hassle factor.
And as many of us are funded by taxpayer dollars to some degree or the other, this represents a great cost savings to centralize this and allow us to participate.
And also, in some cases, makes it more difficult to justify if you're a state institution. Why, in respect of bringing in outside students, out-of-state students, excuse me.
Yeah.
So sometimes that gets questioned by your trustees as well.
Yeah. It would, in my opinion, if we're all paying to do this individually, it makes no sense. If we can work with, the state from one location representing us all cost effectively for the taxpayers, that makes the most sense for all of us.
So Pam, these numbers, this 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, are the numbers, or are they just estimates?
I don't know for sure. Marshall announced them last week, and I hadn't actually seen that. So, yeah, I think this is what they're thinking about doing. They may have to get approval by the board, but maybe I've approved it and haven't known it. But
they are the current numbers. I was at the ITC in Orlando, and it's already a lot of information they just put up on the NC Sarah website. And so they already have the fees announced. Marshall did announce that they're still trying to figure out exactly how to take payments, though they haven't figured that piece out. They've settled on the fees, just not how exactly to take our money.
Right. Marshall does not have a big staff, and so I know that he is also trying to figure all this out, but thank you.
Bitcoins. So that's
yeah. Let's go around it.
And looking forward, I mean, at the end of this year, I think the Higher Ed Act is up for reauthorization.
Yeah.
That's where all of this came out of. It's the last one.
Right.
I know with the accrediting body, some of the focus is already shifting to gainful employment, but this is likely to come up in federal law again and may not be addressed by what we're wrestling with now through NC Sarah. Do you know anything about how that is shaping up federally?
Us thinks it's going to get passed again.
Well, the Higher Education Act, definitely will be reauthorized, but in terms of
the Title IV part,
that piece of it will be reinstated. Yeah.
He according to, I say he like we're phone buddies, but according to his blogs, he says that he believes it'll be within the next year, within this next 12 months.
Yeah, and that's the part that sent everybody scattering when they finally realized what was going on and that this could affect their federal financial aid. And so if we can proactively be ahead of that and Texas can participate, then we don't really care if that's the penalty because we're in good standing.
Right.
Ergo the recommendation again to the coordinating board.
Okay, thank you on that discussion item.
One more question about it, and this may be for our staff. Is it likely that there would be any legislative changes within the state of Texas required in order to participate?
Not sure about the statutory changes that would be involved, but I do think that we've already identified that we have to make some rule changes specific to the definition of physical presence. So we just want to align our definitions with what Sarah has. So. And that we can do in-house. I mean, that's a process that takes roughly 6 months. Thanks.
Anything else? Okay. Are we up, Andrew?
Well, right now we're
ready for lunch.
We have lunch already set up by Cindy. I think we've had a very productive morning session so far. I'd like to have everyone keep in mind, this is exactly what I was trying to find out is where we want to make recommendations for the state. And this is exactly the kind of discussion I want to have going forward into the afternoon. We have two parts that we're going to talk about our recommendations in the future. Unless I don't want to call. You want to call for lunch?
Yeah, let's go ahead and have lunch. And can we reconvene at 12:30?
Sounds good.
All right.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Getting back together again, we're going to resume. We're going to go. We have a few extra items that aren't on the agenda this time. This time around, we just talked about. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew. I want him. We were just talking about. We want him to introduce Rex Peebles because we talked about Rex a little while ago before you got here this morning. All good, by the way. And we won't talk about the bad. And Andrew, why don't you go ahead and take it over and introduce.
Sure. I'm not quite sure how long it was. It's been a few months now since you've been with us, hasn't it? 3 months. 3 months. 3 months ago, we were given Dr. Rex Peebles as our Assistant Commissioner for Workforce, Academic Affairs, and Research. And I can honestly say it's been a very fortunate thing. It's wonderful. He's been an excellent leader for us. He's been wonderful to work for, and he is the perfect person to talk about what we were just speaking on, which was Sarah. He's been going to some of the meetings and can give us some insight on what he's thinking about the Sarah agreement. Rex, if you would come up.
There you go. Okay, let me turn it off. No. Well, first of all, thank you for being here, and we really appreciate your service on these things. And before I came to the coordinating board, December the 2nd, I had served on the UEAC committee and the ACGM for a number of years, and on the original AAT committee. So I've been in the seats that you're sitting in, both. Literally, actually. Well, maybe not all of them, but one or two of them anyway. And so I know that this stuff is all voluntary, and but we really do appreciate the advice and the counsel that you give to the coordinating board. So while the coordinating board has certain regulatory functions, we'd also like to think that we can work with institutions and try to work cooperatively and try to solve some problems that are in the best interest of students for the state of Texas. I did attend a Sarah meeting about a month ago, I guess, in Atlanta, and it was actually the regional meeting for Sarah for the SERB. But Marshall Hill, who's the national director of Sarah, was there to talk about kind of where it's at. And so forth. And part of the discussion that came up was this issue of state portals. And Andrew tells me that before lunch, y'all were discussing this, and it struck me at that meeting that the coordinating board, it would actually make a lot of sense for the coordinating board to act as the state portal for this. And as you probably well know, the way Sarah's envisioned working is that the colleges would apply to the state portal. The state portal would vet the colleges and then turn them over to the SERB, and then the SERB would turn them over to the national Sarah. But it will be primarily the responsibility of each of the state portals to kind of vet the institutions. And what Sarah is looking at right now is having the institutions do what primarily most of you already do anyway, and that is make sure that you are adhering to best practices and whatever policies is defined by SACS, and then and also the compliance certifications that we request that deal with distance education that are also either very similar to, if not identical to, the SACS requirements that also deal with best practices and policies regarding distance education. So part of the state portal's responsibility would be to certify to the national SARA that the institutions that have joined the state are indeed in compliance with all of this stuff, and that sets up the reciprocity among the states. There would be a fee charge for institutions, and you probably know right now it's on a $2,000, $4,000, or $6,000 sliding scale, depending upon your FTEs, as defined by the and I forget what they're using for this. The national, and I forget the. iPads don't only. No, it's not iPads, because iPads only looks at first time full time in college cohorts. So it's not quite iPads, but there's something that they're going to use to determine FTEs, and it's one of those things that just about everybody in the country reports to. And so while it like all other databases, it may have its flaws, it's probably the most common thing we have. And I can get y'all I'll get this to Andrew and then have him send it out to the committee, just what they're going to look at in terms of determining FTEs. So, but the maximum amount of charges would be $6,000. And as someone from there was somebody there from and I can't remember his name now, from UT Arlington at that same meeting, and he was saying that they probably spend $350,000 to $400,000 a year on fees to other states in order to operate there. So, he could do the arithmetic in his head pretty close and figure out that $6,000 is a lot less than $350,000 if you get all the states to join. And so remember, this is a voluntary compact between the states. And so, at that meeting, Marshall Hill was suggesting that maybe by fall of this year, as many as 20 states would be a part of the SARA, and that by next fall, perhaps as many as 40. Now, I don't know if you've seen it, but the DOE has started their negotiated rulemaking over this again. I think it just started this week or so, talking about the rules for this. And part of the something I read yesterday suggested that the panel was not all that excited about SARA, and indeed Marshall Hill was there to testify on behalf of SARA at the hearings. And while they didn't say yes to reciprocity agreements, they didn't say no to it either. And so that's still kind of an open question about what DOE will do with all of this. But I think in the end, reciprocity among states has been a 200 plus year tradition in the United States. So I really don't see them sort of bucking the trend that much, since it's been a long-standing thing that states have worked out on numerous issues, everything from, driver's license to barbers and all kinds of stuff. And teachers are probably one of the biggest ones of those. It all seems to be underway, and I think that from what Andrew was telling me before, y'all had discussed the fact that the coordinating board would probably be the kind of logical place to act as the portal for that. There is one thing that to sort of speed that along will have to happen is we think that there may be required some legislative change in order to make it SARA work for the state of Texas, and it primarily deals with proprietary schools and how they're treated under state law, because under SARA, this is open to both public and private, profit and for-profit schools to be a part of SARA as long as they meet the criteria. And so I have a meeting next week with the coordinating board's legal counsel and Cam Mayer in my division, who works primarily with out-of-state schools and certificates of authority and authorization for them to operate in Texas. And so we'll sort out whether there doesn't need to be legislative change in order to make Texas work with SARA, and if there is, then we'll try to take that forward. And of course, that would not go to the legislature until spring. But the hope would be that we could get that, if it is necessary, we could get that passed, and have all the other mechanisms set up and in place, so that we could then join SARA and go to work with it sometime next spring. Next fall at the very latest, fall of 15 at the very latest. So, any questions you have for me or any comments about that?
I did verify the FTE standard they use, and it is iPads.
Is it iPads? Okay.
This probably won't help us given the timeline for Texas participation, but there's a special provision on the pricing that institutions that join prior to September 1st of this year get a initial 18-month term, and then 12-month renewals.
Yeah, instead of an annual membership, you get 18 months. Yeah.
No other questions?
No, as somebody who's been on the SACS list for years, it's nice to finally meet you in person because you dominated that listserv for helped so many of us. I'm at UTEP, so I just wanted to say it's nice to put a face to a name. So welcome to the coordinating board for sure.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you, Rex. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Any other questions for Rex, or any other related to the state authorization issue? Okay. You wanted to move on to program inventory. This is another one of our ad hoc agenda items.
Yeah, this is just a short update. A while back in 12, you gave us institutions were asked to submit a listing of their distance education programs. It was called the Distance Education Verification Report that was submitted to us and the coordinating board. It's supposed to be a once every 2-year submission. So this is the year, it's supposed to be the next one. What our vision is, and let me go back a little bit, we have been working on it and we have cleaned up that list so it actually matches our inventory, which is going to make things easier. And this is our vision. From this next time when we are going to try to ask the institutions to update their distance education programs, we're trying to make it I shouldn't say virtual, automated. So therefore, you won't have to fill out that spreadsheet again. You can, in our vision, confirm or delete programs that are not either active or if they are active, confirm that they're there, as well as try to add new distance education programs that you may have within certain guidelines. For instance, one of the things that we were discussing was that, for instance, an online program just needs notification to the board, to the coordinating board staff. However, an off-campus face-to-face program has a different approval process. You have to give 30 days notice to people within a 50-mile radius of your teaching site, and then they have 30 days to file an objection. Then you have 30 days to work it out before approval. Those we will have a different process for, but at least it might streamline this process in the next year, coming up in 2014. So just want to let you know you didn't do that in vain, that we're actually using the data. And I think there's over, I want to say, close to 7,000 different programs between community colleges and universities within the state. So this highly utilizes the distance ed mode, and that's in all different modalities, fully online, hybrid, as well as off-campus face-to-face and electronic to group.
And when you say programs, you're referring to not only degree programs, you're referring also to certificates?
Also certificates. Right. Also certificates. We have all those on this database. So hopefully, in fact, I'm meeting with our staff next week to go ahead and talk about how we're going to get this portal set up so that institutions will be able to start interacting with it shortly. And that's all. Just wanted to give an update.
So as things evolve and you have a website that's ready to do that, you'll let us, obviously let us know.
I'll let you all know.
Because we're all going to be responsible for contributing to that in one way or another.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else on that? Okay. Sherry, you look like you wanted to say something.
We're trying to work on that now. The only issue we're having right now is just how to it's an IT issue. It's just how to interact it with our own database as far as inventory, so that would be the same places drawing information from.
Okay, and then one other question. So this is the year that we should make sure that all of our programs are all in order to report it.
This would be the year. It's supposed to be every 2 years, so
Right.
we did it in 12, so this should be the year that we're doing it again.
And then, but you will send us a notice to let us know when it's time to report that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I just want to make
It'll
sure.
either go probably to the chief academic officer, most likely, for that will give the notification. And then usually it seems when we give it to the chief academic officer, excuse me, for the most part, they send it to whoever is over their distance education department, and they verify the programs.
Andrew, I wanted to go back to our minutes from our July meeting. That's a long
Yes.
time ago. But on page 3 at the top, I just wanted to reintroduce a suggestion I made then. I suspect that the answer is going to be largely the same from what you've already said. But I had raised the question then of, is it possible to address or incorporate the distance education notification process into the developing of the distance education verification report database? And at the time, your thought was that would be problematic because of the amount of resources it would take to integrate those two processes. But as such right now, I mean, it's a very manual process to do those notifications, and I think probably you've experienced it, just to track that they're being done as well. So has any new thought been given to having a timeline for integrating those two, so you have, here's the database of stuff that is approved, and here's a pathway for notification that then gets recorded in there as well?
We've thought about it. Like I said, there are some that lend itself for approval processes, like online and hybrid. The verification process that I'm thinking about, it lends itself to it because it's just a notification. It's just a matter of, and I think it could be done, we just need to do more research on it. It's a matter of, if I was to propose having a distance education program at an outside site, let's just say off-campus, face-to-face. I think that's what you're referring to, that kind of approval process. How I would have, first of all, how I would have that off-campus, face-to-face location in our database so that it could actually notify people around it. Because sometimes it might be a new place altogether and we might not have it in our records. That's one thing. And number two, if you already know about the place, how we could get that, how we get the database to notice where that location is and to then send out, I guess it would be like a generic kind of notification to all the schools within that 50-mile radius. It's possible, but I haven't, right now we're trying to just get it so that you can confirm and deny. Once I get that one up, then we'll start looking into that.
And it is becoming easier with more sophisticated but easy to use GIS tools. Things like Google Maps, where you basically can put in a zip code and have it give you a centroid point for latitude, longitude, and say, show me everything with radius 50 miles. And then that's the information you need to generate, okay, here's who it has to go to, and then that looks up a relational database table that says, here's the email contact, and it's incumbent upon those who are supposed to be notified, or the institutions, to update their information so they get the notice and they know that someone wants to do that. But it seems like you've got a lot of the pieces coming together and building this first database that, because you'll probably have some of that automated where you have to have contacts for who at the institution gets that. Maybe it's just the chief academic officers. Correct. But that would be really helpful to us, because I know we spend a lot of time chasing those, especially when the department kind of went around the process instead of doing the notification centrally. I know it would be helpful to have a clear way to do it, where you fill out a form, you put in what the site is. It has to be on a list that you have already approved as an off-campus site, and then once that's validated, it does the notification, and any exceptions or complaints about it could be registered back through the system too. So I know I just did a really deep dive into how it technically might work, but it would be incredibly helpful to us to see big picture in Texas. Where are people doing this? Because even with the MHERCs and looking at undergraduate or lower division off-campus and distance ed, we don't really big picture go out and look at who is doing what. And as an advisory committee, it seems like that would be helpful for us to know who is doing what offsite, how much is that versus just pure online. So just a suggestion I wanted to keep in the conversation if we could for future consideration.
Suggestion well taken. I agree with you. I mean, I think that would be a very helpful part of the database. And I also wanted to say, to go back to the Sarah discussion we've been having, if there's any components of Sarah that they would like to have, that they would require, say if they wanted certain pieces of information, we were trying to find out what that might be in order to put that in the system as well. So whenever you put in your distance ed verification, all that information is in there, so you can use the same one to apply for Sarah information, possibly. Any other questions on the database? And we're trying to get that posted for public view when I do this verification as well. That's all I have.
Okay. All right, we're going to get, I assume, Pam, we're going to get back to our regularly scheduled programming, as they say. And actually going to turn it right back over again to Andrew again. Discussion of the Cost of Distance Education Task Force Committee. If you'll remember, last couple of years, and Van Davis was involved in a lot of this, he gave a report on the cumulative results of all the different cost analysis surveys that we did. We struggled with that for a long time because there were so many different parameters and so many different ways to determine costs and so many different categories of things to include as to what it actually costs to offer a distance education program, a course, so many different components in it. So that's as far as I know, and Pam and I were talking about this a little while ago, as far as I know that it's gotten. The report was filed. Van gave the report to this group. I don't even know if it was at the last July meeting or was even previous to that.
I'm going to say.
We can go back and look it up in the minutes, too. But where are we with this right now? And I think perhaps the ultimate, one of the questions is this something that we need to continue with, and why do we need to continue with it? Is there, and there could be very, very good reason. I'm just saying, I'm just going to pose that question. Where are we standing with this, and where do we need to go with this from this point forward? So.
And why I put this on the agenda, why I recommended it, was that even though we talked about other initiatives in the last meeting, this one I think stood out because of just the nature of it, the cost of education, and that's a big point in the state to try to find out if it's really cheaper to do distance education. Last meeting we had, we discussed the need for a task force of individuals, and we said CFOs, faculty, IT staff, IR staff, Ltac members, and executive leadership to all come together and to look at institutional reporting, financials, training, LMS, student service, and training costs. And that we would like to also include institutions like Western Governors University to participate in the task force to talk about the cost of distance education. We decided in that last meeting as well to make a subcommittee to decide a timeline for this task force and how it would operate. And we wanted the task force to have adequate representation from the different sizes and types of institutions across the state. And we had, in the last meeting, we had volunteers for the task force was Mark Workman, Michelle Duran, Nathan Hewitt, and Sune Palzoli. Out of that, since last time we met in July, some are not on the committee anymore. So there's two parts for this agenda item. One, is this what we still want to do? Is this what the body still wants to do? Number two, if we do we want to revisit this task force? And then who would like to be on the task force and what size we want it? That's where I was coming from.
Somebody, and I'm just not necessarily directing this to Andrew, but somebody please refresh my memory or the group's memory, for that matter, as to what was the full rationale for doing this in the first place? Outside of comparing costs between face-to-face and online.
Is it legislative?
I know, but what was the legislature's, I'm sorry, yes, I knew, yeah, thank you. What was the legislature's purpose for doing that?
Was to exactly look at this, the cost of delivering education.
That's right. Okay, thank you. That's right. And that's right. And now I remember that. Okay.
We all figured out that it was not cheap.
Right. Okay.
I think what we came up with was that the methodology was so different that it was hard to.
So yes. So since the report was filed and the report was given to us by Van.
Correct.
I
think it was.
I'm sorry?
I want to say that it was talking about it the time before, the meeting before.
The time before that, yeah. So it was not ever presented to the legislature in any way? Has it ever gone to the legislature? Or has it been exported from the coordinating board in any way?
I'm not sure. I know that the report was published on our site that people could actually read it. So therefore, I'm not sure where it went from there. I'm not sure.
So this is something the legislature didn't pick up on yet?
I think
I'm not saying that they're not going to, but they just haven't yet. I'm just trying to find out where it is.
I actually
right
thought
now.
the
Trying to find
legislative budget board started looking at this, and I don't remember where they went with it, because I somehow vaguely remember having a phone call with somebody there.
So I think right now it's looking at, we need to find out where the report went.
Right. I think that's one of the key questions is where did it go outside of the coordinating board, and is it being picked up by an outside body? And if it was, and yes, it was. I remember what you said, Sune. It was requested by the legislature. What has happened at that level so far, if anything? And do we need to take an initiative at this point to try to investigate any of these issues further, or should we be waiting for feedback from the legislature as to where, or additional information that they would want, or the coordinating board would want, for that matter?
And the methodology, I think, was the problem. Really was. I mean, how do you account for almost every institution around this table has got physical infrastructure built already, so you already have investments in it. So you're not really accurately measuring the costs anyway, because it is expensive. There's no way around it.
Mm-hmm.
All of our costs are clubbed in together, so it's very hard to separate out. So for Blackboard, for example, we have 30,000 students in Blackboard, but how do you separate out the costs of a student who's only online from everybody else? So doing those kind of accounting was a problem, I think.
I just want to pipe in and say my concern would be, I think you're probably on track. Certainly find out where the report went. But at the same time, I'm all about not getting on a radar screen if we don't need to be. So I just want to just kind of fly low.
Meeting adjourned.
I walk delicately. I mean, I think we all know that. We don't want to. I think we should be proactive, but then again, we certainly don't want to offer things that aren't going to be beneficial. So if that makes sense, does that make sense? So I just want to be careful when going to the legislators.
Well, sure. But yeah, I think the first part of what you said, though, is important to do. Where is it now, and what is being done with it now,
right.
And what was the purpose of requesting it overall, towards what end? Okay, yes, I know it needs to determine the cost of distance education, and perhaps it needs to determine that cost in some sort of uniform way from institution to institution. And yes, it probably wants to compare that cost to face-to-face delivery, although I don't think we got into that aspect of it at all. But toward what end? What's the reason for it? So, and then maybe we can address these issues. And then maybe as an advisory committee, create a subcommittee that's going to drill down a little bit more specifically, and then get to the meat of what really needs to be done in this issue.
Yeah. We really would have to have criteria, though, on how to identify what goes in what box, because it's all over the board. I mean, the costs are there, but everybody records it differently, and like Sune said, you've got some students that are fully online, but they're using the same kind of online tools that your fully on-ground students are using. And how do you separate that out? And it's essential for fully online, but the on-ground students now wanted those same kinds of benefits that the online did. So it's really blurred, and so it's very hard to do that.
And yes, that's exactly right. And we, as an institution at Houston Community College, we're also considering, okay, how do we deal with hybrid students in this particular situation? And how do we deal with what we call web-enhanced students, where we have a very, very significant online presence and online support mechanism for those students, but those classes meet face-to-face entirely. But it has a very, very significant web presence, and where does all this figure into it? There's so many potential variations and so many different ways that various institutions have figure costs, probably is the best way to put it, that it's very, very, very hard to corral all this into one kind of comprehensive report that really gives us some significant data to go forward with.
Well, and again, I would want to know what we're doing this for, because without a clear understanding of what we're doing it for, we don't need to be taking time to do something that's going nowhere. And then secondly, if we don't collect information and really compare what we're trying to compare to one another, we're not getting there anyway. So I think that would be two things. Andrew, if you can find out. And also, if the legislature wanted it, that's a pretty broad thing. What did they want it for, and who wanted it, and who's looking at it? And was it a one-time need or is it an ongoing need? So just better clarification if we were to keep doing this again.
Yeah. And then once we have that clarification, then I think we can reconstitute a subcommittee or a group of some kind to figure out what we're going to do with it from that point on. And it probably means recreating that group. Yeah. But let's just kind of take the temperature of where it is now and then find out what the end result is like we've been.
Steve and Pam, in the meantime, would it make any sense for us to consider disbanding the existing group? It has 2 of the original 4 members. One of their initial pieces of work was to come up with a charge for the group. I don't know if that happened, and if it hasn't happened, I would suggest that we go ahead and consider disbanding it and then reforming it if need be, based on what feedback we get from staff and LBB.
Sune was on the group. Did you do anything with it, or?
No, I tried crawling people to get one phone call together. Mark was supposed to coordinate this. He was going to run the subgroup. But I don't think we were able to get a time to even have a phone call. So that didn't happen.
Okay. And that group's primary charge was to come up with a charge.
Come up with a charge, correct.
Right. So, and since we,
That was last
and based on
July.
the discussion of the last 10 minutes, we really don't know what that charge ought to be yet.
Not yet, yeah.
So once we get some information,
Yeah.
then we can reconvene on this. And it may be something, and if it is a timely issue, it may be something that we might be able to work on in between these sessions, where we can set something up and recruit a subcommittee and start working on things, but notify everybody and keep everybody updated on where we are with this.
Correct.
So once we get some information, please send it out to the entire membership, and then we can react and take appropriate steps at that point. So yes, Patrick, I would tend to agree that the group should be disbanded, or for whatever's left of the group should be disbanded at this point.
Go away, Sune.
So
Would you like
you're
that tabled, or would you like the motion?
There we go.
Steve, would you like that
Job is done.
that tabled, or would you like a motion to disband it?
I don't know. What do you think, Pam? Or Andrew?
Well, if it was just an appointed one, I don't know that we need to
Yeah.
have a motion to unappoint them, just disband it, I didn't think.
Pending further information.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we need a motion for it.
Okay.
Okay. No, actually, I don't know if it's you again or not. We have discussion of learning technology advisory committee priorities from last meeting. The minutes of the last meeting, right. Do you want to go through that? And then really Pam and I can take the next agenda item, which is springboarding off of this discussion. I mean, just start this discussion.
Okay.
And then springboarding off of that, it really leads into number 11, which is where should our future directions be? What should we be emphasizing? Okay? In other words, one of those questions right now is should we be continuing to do this cost of distance education study? Okay, so that's on the agenda of what we don't know exactly yet what to be doing with that. But this is where we're launching into now. So let's go into the minutes of the last meeting and see where we are with that.
And where we are is on the last page of the minutes, number 9, where we talked about the last priorities that we were going to discuss for the future LTAC activities. First one we talked about was competency-based instruction, and we were looking at this because we said it was going to be more and more prevalent in the state of Texas. And we cited Western Governors University as an institution that already is doing competency-based instruction. And we wanted to find out about the pedagogy and the need to address distance education pedagogy within competency-based instruction. That was the first priority we had. It was just to look into that one topic, competency-based instruction. The next one was analytics, and try to find out where we were losing students. And it was from Pam. And I'm not quite sure. I think this was this the learning analytics that we were talking about? Yeah.
Well, predictive analytics
Yes.
on where you're likely to lose students and who's at risk, and what are the interventions that make a difference.
So that was the other part, the second priority that we were talking about having the LTAC focus on. The third one was online learner authentication and professional development for the Ltac, and I think that's more of a informational item for us. What kind of tools are they using now to have online learner authentication?
Yeah, and the discussion, I think, if I remember back then, it may not have gotten reflected in the meetings, had to do with the HEOA, the most recent of 2008, the Higher Education Opportunity Act of 2008, and language that was included in that, and then subsequently was adopted, embraced by SACS, which you're probably all familiar with, but indicates that the institution that's offering an online course or an online program needs to ensure that the student who registers, I can't remember exactly what the language says, but the person who registers for the course is the person who's taking the course, and needs to provide an authentication system that can verify that. Now, in my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the current language, that current language certainly allows for a user ID and password system, which is what 99% of all institutions use. But it also promoted the use of newer technologies that could be used for this purpose. I think one of the things that I mentioned at the last meeting is that we were actively looking at other authentication systems, electronic authentication systems. And in fact, we went out for a RFP and had about a half dozen different companies respond to that RFP. I don't know if you're doing something similar to that too. You're shaking your head.
No, I've been talking to people.
Oh, okay.
Haven't done an RFP.
Right, and we actually did an RFP. So we have a little bit better understanding of what's out there in the field, what kind of authentication that they use, because there's various types, using video cameras, using biometrics, and perhaps some other systems as well. And I think the ultimate question was, what do we need to do if we need to do anything now, which is probably not, since we all use user IDs and passwords right now, but what do we need to be aggressively pursuing in the future? And if the technologies are expensive, which some of them might be, or unaffordable in one sense or another, depending on your institution, depending on your FTE, depending on a number of different things, is there something that we as a statewide committee can recommend to the coordinating board or others to say, can we do this on a statewide level? Kind of like the discussion that we had a couple of years ago about LMSs and that sort of thing. So that's a lot of the information that's surrounded that state authentication, online learning authentication system. And I'll be happy to talk about more about that later when we actually get into the next agenda item. We talk about future things. But that was the background to that.
And if I was to combine the last two entries and not repeat what we've already said in the other priorities, would be learner-centered instruction and faculty training. Open source resources was one that came up as well that we wanted to look into. And that was pretty much it. Those are the things that we wanted to prioritize from the last meeting that we wanted to look at for future meetings.
Okay.
And I just want to find out, is that still where we want to go? Or do we want to eliminate some or change things? But that goes into the next agenda item.
Right. I was just going to say that. It's kind of a nice segue into the next agenda item where we talk nice segue into the next agenda item where we talk about these items that Andrew just reviewed, and also talk about what other new issues are coming up, and then what we want to center on as a group, and how we want to center on that, how we want to dig deeper into each one of those. So let's stop at this point before we actually officially launch into the next agenda item, and look at some of those things that Andrew just mentioned from the minutes. Competency-based instruction. That's a big can of worms. That's a big issue. A lot of it has to do with determining student learning outcomes for each course. I think we've pretty well got that, at least at a statewide level, in hand with the WECM and the ACGM and some of the other things that are available, which clearly outline what SLOs need to be included in each of the courses, and PSLO assessment program, student learning assessments, which most institutions should be doing at this point with SACS requirements. So competency-based instruction is one issue. I wish we had a place to list these up, like put them on a list or something like that so everybody could see. Learning analytics or predictive analytics, really to jump up one slight level, not one slight, one general level higher, predictive analytics. And that was another one, by the way, that, and I don't mean to dominate the conversation here, but that was another one that I thought we might be looking at a statewide level. Individual companies are out there marketing their wares to our distance education programs on learning analytics programs. There's a couple of them out there, the names of which I can't recall right now, but I'm sure you all know them too. But is this something like authentication, like a learning management system thing that could be approached at the statewide level? Don't know. I mean, it's just something that we could investigate. That was the next one, the learning analytics, or rather predictive analytics. And then, of course, as I just mentioned, the online learner authentication. That's number 3. We talked a little bit about course quality and learner-centered instructional design. That was something else that I brought up at the last meeting. And whether we can emphasize on professional development programs for faculty, really, that would center on course improvement, pedagogical improvement for online teaching, and training for different LMSs. You know, baseline training for different LMSs, which would really be the same training because most of them have the same features in them anyway. And then the other issue was open source. Open educational resources is probably the best way to think about it, because when I think open source, I'm kind of torn between open educational resources, which are instructional materials, and open source software, which I'm not referring to in this case, like Linux or something like that. So open educational resources is probably the better way to refer to that. So let me open up the floor to everybody to see what you want to comment on with those items, and then eventually we'll launch into the next agenda item, which is what do we have that's new, and then kind of have a discussion of what we want to center on. Patrick.
Now, personally, I ask myself, who am I representing on this committee? Is it my institution? Is it my university system? Is it all four-year institutions in Texas? And I don't really have an answer to that, but I personally am very interested in all of these, but there are lots of institutions that are not represented around this table. And so I would like to suggest that we design a survey and we identify who is the distance education person of each of our 4-year and 2-year institutions, get them to complete that, because I think there's a lot of stuff going on that we may or may not be aware of. Steve, you've done an RFP. You have deep knowledge on the authentication issue.
Well, I wouldn't say deep, but I would just say some knowledge.
Knee deep.
Yeah. I stuck my toe in it.
And there are probably others that do as well. And that would be a great opportunity to share that thing and see if, well, we're all verging on looking at biosig for this or whatever. And then you can capitalize on it and go, here, the state of Texas wants to do this, and this is our bargaining power. But right now, even when we do the very valuable sharing of here's how I'm doing authentication or here's how we're thinking about competency-based ed, it still it misses a large portion of our state's higher ed institutions. So I would love to see us put together just a brief survey on these topics and identify the institutional rep who would do that. And it could be sent out to chief academic officers. Of course, it'd be voluntary. But that would be really great information to have back to this body, because if we're supposed to be analyzing data on distance education and making recommendations, we really need to make sure all the data is represented, or at least there's that opportunity for it. So I would recommend that we discuss which of these are salient to us here, and then create a kind of a needs analysis survey of what are the opportunities among all institutions to do something together.
Comments from anybody else? What do you think of that? Bill?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a great idea because, we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what everyone's doing. One of the other things, the big thing on our campus and in our system is testing and assessment. You know, what is everyone doing besides, the obvious respond to lockdown browser and turn it in? What are we doing for math classes and economics and problems that have to be solved.
You just reminded me of something. Respondus also now has an authentication.
Yeah, right.
Monitor.
So I would agree, but I think we need to know what people are doing out there for assessment because it comes up time and time again. I'm sure on all of our campuses. So I think it's a really good idea.
I would just piggyback on that. I think the survey is a great idea. But combined with the assessment and the online learner authentication, just the academic integrity in general, our identity solutions has moved into Should this be a proctoring solution? So just the whole can of worms that comes with addressing academic integrity, not only from kind of an authentication and a policing side, but also in the faculty development and course design and developing good modules that are more resistant to academic integrity.
And the one last comment. The other thing we've never met a technology that we didn't like. And so I think we have to be careful about continually adding cost to what we're doing and passing those costs ultimately on to the students. And one of the things that we're trying not to do is we're really focused on trying not to do that, whether it's with publisher content or with assessment opportunities like using a third party like ProctorU, where the cost is passed on to the student.
Right. Right.
And so I think that's just something that we need to consider.
Okay.
I was going to say, too, just I think having a survey is a good idea because that really does inform us as to what are, the people we're representing, because I agree with you. We're here, with an eye on our institution, but a mind for what's going on across the state, and that's a good strategy. I would also say that things like competency-based instruction, are not just state issues. They're, it's hugely a national issue. They're for-profits, not just for-profits, but private institutions, places like Pearson, others are getting heavily involved in that. It's inside higher education a lot, and so there are some things I think, even if we survey, we can bring some things forward and act on them, I mean, from your list that you've had before, there may be things we want to continue to move forward that are already on your list while doing the survey, because I think some of these things already have traction, and to me,
right.
That's one of them that stands out for me personally because, is competency-based instruction.
I would agree with Bill and say we have a great resource in Van Davis, who has led an initiative for the state of Texas to create the first competency-based baccalaureate at public institutions.
Right.
And I know the struggles he's gone through with that, and working very closely with SACS and bringing faculty members together to create the competencies, deep knowledge that is in the building. So we should bring that to this group too, so we kind of have a primer on what are the hurdles and why do we do this now versus 2 years from now? How can we accelerate progress towards it? What are the outcomes? Those kind of things.
Okay.
I think both of these things, the survey and the competency-based education, kind of fits into both things that we just discussed. One is the survey that we're going to already be doing, because it's this year we're going to go through distance ed and confirm all of that information anyway. So it's perfect timing to collect that other information while you're going through that process, and it's not two separate types of things.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Because we could piggyback our survey.
Good idea. Well, you could.
As long as we're doing that. I mean, it could be part of that same effort.
Kill two birds with one stone.
The other thing, as far as competency-based, I think that report and what direction that may be going, some of those things could come back and kind of drive the types of discussions and where we are going, and the cost of, it blends right into that, the cost of education.
Let me add one other point, too. I mean, I like your idea, Patrick, too, and I think that's something we ought to do, and I think we're getting a consensus. I'm not hearing anybody speaking out, really. None of us are speaking out against it. I think, however, if we do a survey, we have to keep in mind that it needs to be timely, and we need to do this thing very, very quickly. What I would recommend, and I'll throw this out for discussion to the group too, is that we get the survey done before, well, this is kind of funny to say this, but before our next meeting, even though there was a lot of time between last meeting and this one. And we'll get to the next meeting, by the way, later on in the agenda. We want to set another meeting a lot sooner than the time gap that occurred between the last meeting and this one. But I think timeliness of completing the survey, of getting this information from all colleges and universities throughout the state, that we can possibly survey, would be very, very worthwhile, and then have us at the next meeting, hopefully in the summer, be able to then refine those topics and really better define and refine what it is that we as an advisory committee want to really dig into. Does that seem like I'm trying to put hang some structure around the plan.
And you're looking at me, so I'll answer. That
Sune, I'm trying to hang some structure around the plan. I'll look at you.
No, that sounds great. And I don't know what resources the coordinating board has to put towards a survey for administering a survey. So if that at all is a barrier, I would make available UNT's use of Qualtrics. It's a really robust survey technology, and I could set it up and
is that the
provide
Smarter Measure thing? Or
no, Qualtrics is just it's like SurveyMonkey on.
Qualtrics. Okay, yeah, okay. It's like
I was going to say on
SurveyMonkey,
steroids, but that's not necessarily a good thing. So I don't know what the new phrase is.
Because we work with you on our student evaluations. I was wondering if you had something.
Yeah,
to do
and
with
it's
that. Okay.
no, it's the same.
That's
It's same
different system.
technology.
Got it.
SETI is in Qualtrics, but Qualtrics is the platform. So, and it's very easy to go in and set up and then export the data in Excel and build mailing lists. If we just get a list of here are the email addresses.
And to make it more operational, do we want to put together just a small working group to help put the survey together?
I think so.
Sounds like Patrick volunteered to be chair.
Yeah.
Patrick, we've now been talking a little bit. Would you then go back to your original? How does this, to what end are we going to be doing this, and what was your vision on that?
Yeah, well, one is to kind of prioritize our priorities and understand if these are in fact the things that we should be looking at.
That everybody's interested in?
But also, even once we've done that, we go, yeah, this is definitely the thing we should be looking at more. So then what do? Because we don't know what each other is doing in addressing that individual priority. This kind of does both. So it's expeditious to do a survey on what we think are the priorities to establish indeed that they are, but then to have some sense of, as a state, how are we responsible for learning technologies dealing with those? That was the premise.
Wouldn't item 2 follow item 1? Okay, so we do need to do the survey first. Okay, all right. Why don't we, and it seems like kind of like a natural segue, Pam, to kind of launch into the next agenda item. And since we've got 5 or 6 different items that were really outlined from the last discussion, why don't we open the floor to other things that we might be surveying about, other issues, other new things that have come along since the last discussion in July? Yes?
About to go into the new item about. I'm sorry. There you go. I have Dr. Alan Mitchie here, who's a facilitator for the Graduate Education Advisory Committee, and he had an idea of maybe combining the efforts of both Ltac and GIAC, and I was going to let him talk about that a little bit to us so we can at least have it in your mind as we go into this next agenda item.
Thank you. Yes, this was the basis of some conversations between Andrew and myself. The idea came up about having a joint meeting, doing something different for a change with our advisory meetings, and having 2 of our advisory councils meet on the same day and overlap. Of course, you could have part of your time to discuss your agenda, and the Graduate Education Advisory Committee would have part of the day to discuss just their agenda. But there could be a time where the meetings could overlap, where we could have some presentations, have some discussions, have some breakout meetings, and just generally touch base with one another and communicate to one another what some of the shared issues might be. These joint meetings between advisory councils could also be, for example, in the future, between Graduate Education Advisory Committee and the Undergraduate Education Advisory Committee. You may decide, if the meeting goes well, that you would like to have a joint meeting with the Undergraduate Advisory Committee. And so we can kind of mix and match. Perhaps we could do something like this once a year or once every other year if it goes well and if there seems to be a need for it. So that's what we were thinking of doing. The kinds of things that could be discussed would be obviously the opportunities and the challenges that learning technology poses for graduate education in particular. Quite often, so much of what is done in learning technology seems to be aimed towards the undergraduate classroom, undergraduate degrees. But it has interesting implications for graduate education as well. Particularly in the field of doctoral education, it gets a little tricky about what do we do with doctoral dissertations. Are there alternatives that learning technology provides to research papers and dissertations? What do we do with dissertation advising? What do we do? What opportunities and challenges does learning technology present to teaching assistants who are graduate students earning their way through school? Are massive online courses appropriate for graduate education? If so, where? If not, then where are they not appropriate and why? Is this changing? What are the trends? So these would be the kinds of things that could potentially be discussed between your two committees. Also, since Ltac reviews proposals from graduate programs for new online doctoral degree proposals, there's already some back and forth between your committees. You just don't do it face to face. You see the proposals. So that could be something to discuss too. You could get an opportunity to tell GIAC membership, many of whom, by the way, are graduate deans, the kinds of things you are looking for in successful proposals that you approve, and vice versa. GIAC members may want to bend your ear a bit about what they want you to consider about the implications of how they're using learning technology in their proposals. And perhaps on the basis of those kinds of conversations, there could be some recommendations to the coordinating board about how we use our procedures of approving and evaluating new doctoral proposals for online graduate programs. So that's just an idea we wanted to float, and we're going to you first. We haven't approached GIAC with this idea yet. You're meeting first, and GIAC will hopefully be meeting in May, and we can talk to them about it. Or, for all I know, they may be willing to do this in May if you're willing to have this joint meeting at your next opportunity.
Comments?
I think it's a good idea. It's always useful to have some cross-pollination between groups to really identify common issues that we could tackle together. I mean, why not double up on the brain power?
So this would be something like we might have morning meetings with an agenda, and the afternoon would be more professional development and discussion?
Could be, right? Or we could meet together over an extended lunch or something like that. Or we could do it over the course of 2 days if you wanted to do it like that. We have some technical limitations, but these committees need to be broadcast on the web for the public, and this is the only room that's set up to do that. So it's not a problem that can't be solved, but it is a little hurdle in logistics that we'd have to overcome, where only one committee could probably meet to do their official business at a time. So perhaps it would be something like Ltac would meet in the morning, then we'd have a shared lunch and presentation here in this room, and then Ltac would go home and GIAC would begin their business meeting after that. It would probably be something like that, but unless we can work out some other way to hook up the broadcasting.
I mean, I think it's something that we could entertain. I think it's something we should be open to. With a pretty clearly defined list of items to discuss, to address together, that we both have obviously a focus on and a need to address over that lunch or whatever that might be at one period. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to think about it.
Were you just thinking graduate education?
Just graduate education.
That was going to be another question. Thank you. That was another question I was going to ask, if we could do the undergraduate one as well, because that would bring in some of the more of the central focus of the community colleges as well, since they're not involved in graduate education. From a learning technology standpoint, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually discussed that issue a little bit the other day when Alan brought up the notion of having the graduate committee meet with you guys. Then we also broached the issue of, well, what about the undergraduate education advisory committee as well? And maybe not all three at the same time, but there could be a way to bring two at a time together. And you're right, we kind of envision this idea of maybe the morning or even the early afternoon being devoted to the separate committees, but then a portion of that time bringing both together. And as Alan pointed, that does create some logistical issues that we'd have to sort of work out in terms of the broadcast and what have you. But we can work on that and try to figure something out. But we have already talked about the idea of having some other joint committee meetings.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm bringing this up when Andrew brought it up. I don't know if there are implications of this for the survey that you're discussing, if there's something that you wanted to ask in the survey that limits the issues that you want to research for those relevant specifically to graduate education. Perhaps not.
No. Or would that be something that, I don't think so. I mean, what do y'all think? I think that would be something that we would figure out at this advisory committee level, as opposed to going out to all of the constituency involved in delivery of distance education and or other significant learning technologies, because since we are the Ltac and not the DIAC anymore. But then bring that back to the table and say, okay, this is what our constituency emphasized that they want to center on. What kind of implications does that have for the graduate committee? What kind of implications does that have for the undergraduate education advisory council, and so forth and so on? But yeah, I think it's an absolutely I think it's a very good idea to explore. Yes, I think we ought to be thinking about that. So I think it's a good thing. Yeah, I mean, and group.
I would agree, Steve, and maybe as a pathway to considering this a little bit more closely, our agendas aren't particularly informative to someone from the outside looking at them, but our minutes provide a much better understanding of what we do, what we talk about. So maybe between now and our next meeting, the chairs of the respective committees could get together and have shared their most recent minutes and identify what kind of things we might collaborate on, and then suggest how we structure meetings to tackle those particular issues.
Is that okay with the rest of the group, that Pam and I and Andrew have perhaps a phone conference with the Graduate Education Advisory Committee leadership as well, and then figure out where we go from there, and see if we can work something like this out, and see if there's a lot of value in doing it first.
Okay, super. Okay, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Maybe Andrew would like to join us too, just so you are representing the university as well. And
I was just going to suggest including undergraduate.
Or the other way.
Having all three of those
maybe
committees
so.
together
say the same thing.
And share those agendas, because, again, that may be the basis for looking at, gosh, graduate and undergraduate education need to have that kind of content.
So can we put together either a phone conference or a go-to-meeting kind of conference or something like that?
I think that'd be a great idea.
Are you in charge of both of those?
No.
There's somebody else in charge.
You're in charge of graduate GIAC.
Oh, just GIAC, right. There could be a separate thing with UEAC is not what we're discussing right now. This would be kind of a trial first to see if these kind of collaborative meetings prove valuable. And if so, then perhaps we could do it in the future in different combinations with UEAC
Rex,
or other advisory committees.
Rex, you did say that the Undergraduate Education Advisory Committee has had this idea passed by them too already?
No, the idea has been passed by internally about including.
Got it. Oh, within the coordinating board. Got it. Okay.
Right. This hasn't been discussed with UEAC or the UEAC leadership, so it's just an idea.
Okay, great. Good.
I'll work on that.
Let the minutes reflect that.
The minutes, I know the minutes are good.
We'll put that together.
For your information as well, the UEAC approached me before this meeting. The person who's over UEAC, well, not about the actual meeting together right now, but what he did say is if Ltac had any kind of issues that they thought might be relevant to the UEAC, to let me know, and I will bring them to them.
And who chairs that?
That is Dr. Rhino Cornelius.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the staff over the UEAC. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're talking about the chair and the co-chair of the advisory committee itself.
I'm not sure who that is.
Well, the staff would have to be involved too, of course.
Right, but I can get that from Rhino without any problem.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great.
But I can work on that. I'll work on trying to organize the phone conference between all of us.
Terrific. Can we, is it okay now for everybody? Can we launch into number 11, which is really new ideas at this point? I mean, I can start this conversation going if you want. I've thought about a few things. I think Pam has a few notes about stuff that she wants to talk about, too. And when I say these, I'm going to be talking about some initiatives that I've been involved with, maybe at a very, 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 very minimal level. It's just really getting off the ground, or some other things we may have been involved with at maybe at a deeper level. And one of the things that I'm involved with right now, and really, again, getting it off the ground, is the concept of fee-based digital textbooks. I'm sure you all have dealt with this. We are, in a very limited way, offering a program, and by fee-based digital textbooks, I mean when a student registers for a course. This is the model that we have conceived, at least anyway, and we've got operational. We're doing it in a couple different classes, a couple different courses. A student buys the book up front when they register for the course, but they buy that book in a digital form. Now, that accomplishes a couple different things. It gets the student a much less expensive digital version of that book that's available to them from the publisher. They don't pay the full retail price for a print-based textbook. They have the option to buy a print-based textbook for an additional $20 or $30, but even with that additional $20 or $30, and I can't remember exactly what the number is, that number is far below what it would cost on a retail level from buying from in a more traditional bookstore environment. So it provides textbooks to students a whole lot more cheaply, particularly at the community college level where tuition is significantly or somewhat less expensive than it would be to the state university, or certainly less expensive than it would be at private schools or proprietary schools. That is a significant thing for those community college students where in many cases the textbook costs exceed the tuition costs, particularly for in-district students. And that is a big issue for our students particularly. I'm just speaking with my community college lens on right now. What it also does for students, another great advantage, is that it gets them the textbook the first day of class, which for many community college students is a stumbling block, because sometimes they're waiting for the financial aid, but if they can get something a little bit cheaper, they can buy it in front before the financial aid is provided to them. And study after study does confirm, I think, maybe not ultimately and conclusively, but it certainly does confirm that students who get their textbooks on the first day of class end up doing better and have better rates of student success in various, some ways, how student success is defined. But they do better as a group when they get their textbook on the first day of class. So this is an initiative that we're looking at. We cannot exclusively go with any one publisher, obviously, so we're looking at an RFI, in this case, a request for information, not an RFP, to specify a specific vendor in this case, but we're looking for an RFI for all vendors to come forward and say, what textbooks are you offering to our students? Can we get them in a digital form? At what price can we get them in a digital form? How long will those students have them for? Will it be for one semester? Will it be for a year? Will it be for, some are even saying, at a 4-year period. Okay, so there's a lot of moving parts to this, but it's a concept that I think for saving students money and providing more exposure, more proliferation of digital texts, I think it's something that we're looking into and might be something we might put on the survey, is all I'm saying at this point. We've talked about this in the TWU. I don't know if it's not really a technology or anything, but with a TWU discussion before, but we're looking a lot more towards cohort-based block-scheduled programs, where we have specific groups of students identified for specific certificates, for specific degrees, and move them through in a cohort basis where, again, research studies show that moving through as a cohort is obviously going to be a more successful track than it would be to let students be on their own and try to pick their own courses and plan their own degree programs. And that for us would go not only with fully online degrees in the context that we're talking about it, but also workforce certificates, where we're identifying some workforce certificates that can be completely put online and have students move through as cohorts too. So a second idea is cohort-based scheduling and cohort-based programs that would be available from colleges. Another idea, and I'm not sure, I'm kind of really thinking out loud when I do this one, is the need for distance edge specific student services. Now, I know this was addressed in the last, this document right here. Of course, you can all see what I'm showing Pam, right? The Distance Education Survey results, they do this every year. It's put out by the ITC, who Pam mentioned before, the Instructional Technology Council. Every year they do that. Fred Loken, I can't remember, Loken does that out of Truckee in California. He kind of heads that effort. one of the things that they talked about in that study was DE-specific student services, and it's fluctuating back and forth. How much of a need is there for specifically addressing student services for online students specifically? Not sure. That was just another idea that I jotted down. But keeping in mind also what, for example, Southern New Hampshire Community College, which we talked about over lunchtime, is doing, where they, I think, brought on about 150 new student services personnel. It was a huge investment. I'm not saying any one of us could do that, or even as a group we could do that. But they are really emphasizing moving students through with a very, very strong, not only traditional student service support system, but whatever other ancillary kind of student services might be available to them as well. So that's just another idea to think about. Another obvious one, which is brought up once or twice in the conversation already, is MOOCs. What can we be doing, or what should we be doing, or how many institutions are interested in doing massive online courses, massive open online courses? Why are we doing them is a question that every institution needs to answer prior to doing one. How do you fund one? How do you handle the massive numbers of students who register for one? How are students doing? Because the success rates in those classes are not very good, but there's various reasons for that. Because a student may not have the commitment to go towards getting a completion certificate, if you want to call it that. Certainly not academic credit, but a completion certificate. But in some cases, MOOCs are now being offered for academic credit, so that's another question to think about. So I just wanted to kind of seed the group at this point and mention fee-based digital textbooks, mention trends towards cohort-based programs, which apply at all levels of higher education, I think. The need for DE-specific student services, keeping in mind what's happening now at other institutions where they really are ramping that up and seeing better levels of student success. It's also happening not necessarily in an online environment, but in a blended environment, if you will, at City University of New York with their ASAP program, where they're providing very extensive student services, they're providing financial aid, they're providing all sorts of other kinds of services, and moving students through, by the way, in a cohort-based environment, where they're really, at least initially, experiencing significant student success in those. And the last one is MOOCs. So with that, let me just turn it over to the group and see what other topics, or whether you have comments on the ones that I mentioned as well. Anything? Sune?
I think the digital textbooks is a useful thing to look at. But there's a flip side of the digital textbooks, is that unfortunately study after study has also shown that students don't tend to use digital textbooks because faculty are not trained.
Faculty are what?
Are not trained how to use the digital textbooks correctly. So, in fact, there was an article in the Chronicle barely about 3 months ago. So maybe if you're going to tackle this topic, we need to make sure that the topic covers what does it take to make sure that they're used effectively.
Good point.
Because Rice uses it perfectly fine, right? Connections Project has evolved now.
Yeah.
But they are Rice students, and I don't think that applies to everybody. So I know we struggle with those with the students. So.
And even more broadly speaking, do we ask? I think another survey question ought to be professional development.
Right.
And there's so many aspects to professional development.
That'll just need to be a survey on its own almost. I mean, it's, and I think the distance education specific student services piece, we had discussed that maybe a year before last when we were looking at coming up with student success measures. And how do we make students in DE programs successful? Are they predictors of success? And I think one of the topics we were looking at that time was what kind of services do people offer, do successful programs offer, that help with student retention, student graduation rates, student success. So I think it's very timely to visit that again. I think it's useful. And in some sense, it'll fit into the analytics pieces, because analytics is about identifying the correct factors that work.
So let's add pedagogy and let's add professional development. We need to figure out more about professional development, but add those two to the list as well.
I would like to see us add something in about testing. You mentioned ProctorU. I know the state authorization issue has forced some of us to rethink how we test in other states, because sometimes if you hire a proctor, it's a physical presence trigger, and so we're looking at what can we do
like ProctorU to work around that switch. And so I would just like to see what other people are looking at and where there has been some success in testing.
And where the other institutions where the statewide, all institutions want us to emphasize as an advisory committee.
But maybe a survey question of that.
One of the things we've been doing is using public libraries, and we're having some success.
Well, that's what we were doing, but it actually
libraries.
triggered a physical presence in one of the states
In one
because
of
it
the states.
involved their facility. And so then all of a sudden we had to pay a fee as a university to be there giving a test in a public library.
I don't think that will be included in the definition that Sarah is adopting for physical
So
presence.
this may answer itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's one of the things I know that Sarah is saying, that should not trigger physical presence.
Because with our radiology programs, as you can imagine, the test is a lot different,
Yeah.
and we needed real people on site, and it's...
Maybe for that.
Okay.
I don't know.
I was like, never mind.
Got noticed.
All right.
Steve, you mentioned the digital textbook initiative. Are you also looking at common textbooks? I know that...
Define what you mean.
Tarrant County College just signed
Oh.
a deal where,
Now I know
and
what you
the faculty are dealing with, for this American government course, this is the one textbook that we use, and then they'll do a similar, get them up front, course fee. But they were under the impression that you couldn't apply a course fee in order to purchase textbooks for all the students. But when I had checked previously with our budget officer, there was nothing against that. In fact, it would be the incidental course fee statute.
And any
it's
additional
fine.
fee that we would charge, I'm speaking just at my institution level, would have to be approved by the board anyway. So it's not something we could just say, yeah, this is a great idea, let's go ahead and do this. We obviously have to have it approved and make sure it was legal.
And we've checked with our legal. It is legal. Yeah, I mean, at least our attorneys say it's legal.
But common textbooks for an entire course, I would find that very difficult to achieve at my college.
Well,
but it may be
Are you talking
accomplishable
about
at
it too,
others.
Pam?
Well, I mean, we're talking
but I
about
know
it,
the Tarrant-
not talking about implementing it, but we're talking about
I know
the
the Tarrant did. Yes, yes.
Tarrant jumped in. Yeah.
The University of Indiana is doing a lot with that, and they'd be a good one to talk to, though, because they've been doing this for several years. And the interesting thing is when they go and adopt a universal textbook and in an ebook format, they become the ones calling the shots with the publishers, as opposed to the publishers coming and saying, this is going to cost you X amount. They come back and say, no, you want our business, you're going to get a lot closer to this amount than what you want. And so it really puts institutions in the driver's seat in a way we haven't been before, because in the past, every faculty member does their own thing, and so there's no way to do any kind of collective negotiating with a publisher. So it really starts to open up a whole lot of different things, but that doesn't mean that maybe on a statewide basis we could say this number of institutions want to use this material, and it might.
Hard.
Yeah, but
I'm not ruling it out, but it would be hard.
But anyway, even if 20 of your faculty members wanted to use this and 20 of ours did, then that gives us buying power, and the other 20 don't have to go that route. I mean, there's just some new opportunities we could.
Yeah, then we'd be back to fee-based again, is what we're talking about. But either way, it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing.
Combining the two is where your real leverage is.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good discussion to have. The publishers are out there en masse discussing this. The textbook, the bookstores are discussing it. I know Follett has one called Include Ed, and that's exactly what this is. And if you will go with them, they're going to work with you. So it really is an issue that I would be interested in exploring.
So let's put that on the survey list too. I think that's a really worthwhile topic to put on it. Does anybody know also, I heard some information about Texas Southmost College, which has done this already. Is that true? Did you hear about Texas South down in Brownsville?
I have not heard that, no.
I believe one in San Antonio, Texas A&M San Antonio? Is Texas A&M San Antonio doing one of these programs? I've heard that they are too, having a kind of a bundled price for the online materials with their courses, and everybody's using the same. And it might have just been like the business school or something like that.
I know in one of the examples that we're currently doing, which is kind of the impetus for my even bringing this up in the first place and maybe expand the program, but not only at our college but at other colleges too, our English composition, our English 1301 class is doing it in certain instances and at one of our colleges. which is all 1301 classes at one college, and those students are buying those textbooks up front for $30, and other, by the way, supporting and other related instructional materials, not just the textbook, but other materials, readers, I think, and stuff like that for the English class, for what normally would have cost about $157, I think, is what it was. And then again, for the additional $20 or $30, they can get the print-based version of that of those materials as well. So it's a good deal for them. And if they're better learners online, fine. If they're better learners with a book in front of them, so be it as well. The cost is still reduced for them. Other suggestions? Other ideas?
I think all of these topics have subtopics too, just like MOOCs. Already there are organizations out there trying to become kind of a broker for, if you take a MOOC from you and you and you, what is that going to do for a student? And then how do they develop some kind of transcript to prove they've taken all these MOOCs? And will that transcript then be recognized by employers? So there's all sorts of things happening around every good idea. They're kind of, to it. So anyway, these are all decent ideas.
Unless we have some other comments, I'm going to read you something just real quickly and kind of review it real quickly from this distance education survey results, the document I referred to before, because they actually have a summative page, and you think it's worthwhile to read their observations and trends, and maybe that would give us a couple more ideas before we close out on this agenda item. They have about 10 different observations and trends. And since they began surveying their members actually way back in the fall of 2004. So this survey's been going on for about 10 years, almost 10 years. But the most recent observation and trends that were noted kind of summatively from this were, number one, and I'll briefly go through these because I'm not going to read them in detail. Student demand for distance education courses and this is a community college survey, but a lot of this also applies to four-year schools, graduate schools as well, continues to grow, obviously. Okay, thoughts about that, things we might be able to explore, how to handle growth and that sort of thing. Number two, as online instruction continues to mature, distance education administrators see a pressing need to address course quality, design, faculty training and preparation, course assessment improvements in student readiness and in student retention. Student retention might be another issue we might want to talk about, or might want to survey.
That's predictive analytics, though, too.
Right, that's exactly right. Growth in the use of blended courses, hybrid, web-assisted courses, web-enhanced. Another one, the gap between distance learning and face-to-face student completion rates has significantly narrowed according to their survey. It used to be kind of like a standard 10-12%. Apparently it's significantly narrowed according to the hundreds of schools, I think, that they surveyed, and that's just at the community college level. Nearly half of the survey respondents said that they've achieved equivalency in student retention, or student success. Student completion, all those things might be defined differently. Community college administrators are somewhat skeptical of the MOOC movement, interestingly, cautiously exploring ways to take advantage of this popular new online course model, perhaps through competency-based learning or personal learning assessment. Okay. Community college is looking for ways to use e-textbooks and open educational resources to help cut costs. The availability of virtual student services has declined in the past few years. The trend is likely due to the budget and staff reductions many community colleges have faced. This is a longer one, so I won't read the whole thing. Many campuses continue to lack compliance with the accessibility requirements for online instruction outlined in Sections 504 and 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. The LMS market continues to be volatile. Certainly LMS is a question that we want to talk about. Survey of LMSs, and is there something that we could do at the statewide advisory committee level to delve into that issue, which we talked about a couple of years ago and really never did anything about. We talked about it, but didn't get beyond the conversation. It goes on to say, despite migration fatigue, nearly one-third of campuses report that they intend to change their LMS in the next 2 years. So there's a lot of changing going on. Online program administration has shifted so that more academic administrators, such as deans and academic VPs, are responsible for distance education rather than library services or in the old days, IT departments, which are more responsible for them. And then they also have an authentication item, too, that we've discussed pretty thoroughly already. So those are some more ideas. Now, a lot of these also, I think, apply to the four-year schools and graduate programs.
I was going to say, I was at Frank's session in Orlando last week,
Yeah.
and when he went over the annual survey, I'd say half the session got kidnapped by the 504, 508 compliance
Really?
issues. And I brought up my notes real quick. It just said, read the Dear Colleague rules, captioning and how to triage students who need accommodations for classes, that the rules are a lot more stringent than many colleges have first read them to be. And I'd say probably, like I said, half the session was everyone kind of running around saying, oh, I don't think we're in compliance then. So that might be something we want to look at.
What else? What else?
This whole, the whole environment does just continue to evolve. I've really studied that survey and actually have written an article about what's happened over the last 10 years in online. But today the numbers are 7.1 million students nationally are taking at least one online course. That's equating to about over a third of the students. And in Dallas, we're at over, well, it's 52% have taken at least an online course, and about 30% are fully online. Right. So these numbers continue to go up. They're not going up as fast as they were 4 or 5 years ago, but the trend is still up. And the real truth is more students that would have been going on ground are now going online. So it certainly is. We need to continue to do these trends and just work towards completion and improvement in what we're doing. And all of the stuff we've done, I think there's been a race to get online. Now we've got to get a race to quality.
I agree. And so many of these issues that we're talking about here address that point. They all, just about every single one of them leads towards quality in one way or another, or improving student retention or improving student success. They all lead towards that. So
we've got some really good experts in the state, though, in so many of the things we just discussed. And so if we could find a way to, bring them in and just have a discussion, more professional development, I think it would be really helpful. And a lot of people are right here in Austin, so it really wouldn't be that much trouble to bring them in. But, a lot of the things we're talking about here are what the for-profit schools have been doing very successfully for a long time, and we're just beginning to say, well, we can't fight it, it's working. And so I'll bring them in. But I think WGU is one certainly we ought to be looking at, because they're hitting on a lot of the things that we were talking about. Basically, their unique value is in the competency-based stuff, but they're doing all the other things that we talked about, and they're doing that well too. So.
Yeah, look at how some of the proprietary schools, most of the proprietary schools address student services. As soon as you call and say that you're interested, as soon as you want to enroll, they just embrace you. From a student services standpoint, here, let's help you find your financial aid. Here, let's help you get registered. Let's plan your degree plan. Here's what you're going to take. You're going to move through in a cohort, maybe. There's all these wonderful things that they're planning for you, which in many cases, at least I know, especially at the community college level, we're not doing nearly as well.
Not at all.
And we need to do better. We need to do better, and we're trying to address these as best we can with the resources that we've got. So, centering on what these key issues, again, I'm going to bring it back to home again. Centering on these key issues, I think, is our role. What issues do we need to center on? What issues do we need to delve deeper into? From an operational standpoint, can we put together a small group of 4 or 5 people, or would you be comfortable, the group would be comfortable putting together a group of 3, 4, 5 people who would put together the survey and get it out? Because I think it is timely. I think it is necessary for us to get out in a very, very timely manner. And I would certainly like to get it out before our next meeting, which is actually the next agenda item, even though it's not on your agenda, is to talk about when we're going to have our next meeting. So is that acceptable? I mean, I would be happy to help. Andrew, you're on it already. You have no choice. But
I'll volunteer to serve.
All right, Patrick, Andrew, myself, Pam. I think you don't have a choice either at this point. Can we get one other person maybe to join us on a phone conference and we can knock out a survey? Is there? Okay.
Thank you.
Sune. And Pam.
Yeah.
Please,
Did we lose our remote people as well?
Okay.
Did we get our remote people there? Did they want to
Are
volunteer?
they still here with us? I don't think so. I think they left after.
They went at lunch?
I think they went to lunch and never came back. Okay. Last chance for new topics, though, before we meet as a group and try to put a survey together. Okay. One of the other things that Pam and I talked about over lunch is the need for a little bit more frequency with the meetings. And what we talked about is trying to put. See, we're also old timers. We also used to be part of the DAC back in the olden days, when I think we used to meet 4 times a year. In fact, now that may be a little bit too frequent. I don't know, but we talked about meeting at least 3 times a year, but certainly not having a gap as long as from last July to now, which was what 6-7 months now. So what we would propose and what we talked about just very, very briefly over lunch was to have a meeting in June, if that's acceptable to everyone, and to have a fall meeting in November, if we can do that as well. I'm seeing a lot of positive nodding of heads, and that looks good. I would also like to nail down a date as quickly as possible. And I don't know whether it's appropriate at this point to even try to get a date, or do we want to I hate to. What do you want to do? Pam, did you have a opinion
Well, I
about
think
this?
on my behalf, if I'm right, I would have to first find out when the boardroom would be available for a meeting to take place in order for it to be broadcast.
That's right.
So I would first need to. I'm writing down the months that you have is June and November. So is it all right if I can just go back and then find dates and then report back to the LTAC committee?
I think if October worked
good.
too, we could do October.
Yeah, October or November.
Yeah.
And
Andrew,
June or July.
I'm a big fan of the way y'all have used Doodle to find out when you can get
Yes.
most people
Agree.
here. Of course, you want to make sure first that room's available, your co-chairs are available, and then, pick some dates that the rest of us can fill in as we
Did you
can.
do that, Andrew?
I can ask Cindy to do that.
It's called delegation.
That's right, May. That's right.
Ooh, that's right. That's right.
Now, just to get.
Okay. And what we're actually maybe talking about, if depending on boardroom availability, this room availability, it might need to go into July. Is that?
Well, let me.
Or see what's available
That's
first.
what I was going to do. I was going to work with Cindy to find out what dates are available in June, July, October, and November, and then I
Okay.
can report back to you all to find out if you like any of these dates, and then if you do like the dates, especially for the
We'll do
next
the, do the
upcoming
survey.
meeting, then we can do the doodle poll through
Okay.
Cindy.
Does that work for everyone? Well, I don't know.
I can look, but I think June is what we said originally, and everybody was nodding, so I didn't know if I wanted to.
Other than he said May.
Other than the graduate.
Except for the graduate.
They could move to June anyway.
Yeah.
Late May, June.
I'll check out dates. I'll just check out dates in general, and I'll get back to you.
I mean, the overall goal with all this is just to have more frequent meetings, and not nearly as much time passed between the last one and this one for subsequent meetings in the future. So, if that's acceptable to everyone, that's fine with me.
Andrew, for those of us whose term is up in 2014, when in 2014 is that? Is it an academic year, calendar year? How does that work? Because I think a few of us are rotating off. End of August, okay.
Good, it doesn't get you off the working groups. Still keeps you committed to the working groups, too. You weren't going to get away that quickly. All right.
I have one more.
Andrew's
We still need to address the standing committee for the doctoral program approval. So I'd like to know if, I'm not sure how you all came up with that committee in the past. Was it just voluntary? Well, then I would need a standing committee, so that when doctoral proposals come up for review, that I would send it to this committee first. That committee would look over the doctoral proposal, see if it has all the components, and there's some guidelines that I can give you. See if it has all the components, and then whether or not you decide, whether or not you determine it is whether say it again, whether or not you determine it should be advanced to the full LTAC committee. So if you were interested in that standing committee, I'll be happy to take your name down. Pam?
Happy to help as well. You got 3 right here.
Todd, and who's the other one?
Patsy.
Gotcha. Thank you.
What that all, excuse me. What that also means is just making a brief report to, at the meeting where we discuss it, like we did today with the TWU thing. Just, what were the findings of your your group's discussion? Okay, pretty simple.
And I want to just remind us that we do have in our rules that we were able to meet through telephone conference as well. So if we need to meet ahead of time, we can do that as well.
And we've done that in the past.
Yes.
Our new charter in the administrative code says that we may meet 4 to 6 times, including via teleconference, not telephone conference. So would that include video conferencing?
I would say so.
I wouldn't see why not.
Yes,
the
I would say so.
the 1 or 2 times we did meet was by phone conference, but I don't see if there's any problem with doing something, via GoToMeeting or some other similar technology.
It has to be archived, though, right?
Yeah,
It needs to have minutes. Well,
and it's easy to
It needs to have
It
minutes.
needs to be open to the
Document.
public, and it needs to be broadcast via the web, unless prevented by technical difficulty. So you have to at least plan to do it.
Okay.
Right?
Make a good faith effort, right?
Didn't work.
Yes.
I think we could do that.
I have some dates already.
Oh,
Wow.
Because Cindy is good.
Wow.
Cindy is good. Right now,
Hold on a second. Cindy, can we get paid for this job too? Can you work on that real quick?
all right, we have Ltac, we have June, we have June 16th through the 20th, June 23rd, 26th, and 27th. I've taken all the dates at the boardroom's open.
23rd?
June 16th through 20th, 23rd, 26th, and 27th. And then July
First week, not the last week.
7th through 9th. 4th is on a Friday.
Okay. That's Monday through Wednesday, 7th through 9th.
Is that a Monday? Yes. Yes.
yeah, I'd prefer not to go around the 4th of July. Too many people are taking off.
Yeah.
Well, the 15th of June is Father's Day.
15th of June.
Father's Day, yeah.
17th, too.
We could go later in the week.
Turn your,
Yeah, Bill, your microphone.
we can't hear you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yes.
Do the doodle thing, yeah. I think so too.
Yes.
At least it gives us an idea.
I'll work with
Coming
Cindy
out.
and we'll get a doodle poll out and then she'll compile all the
Thank you.
information.
Great.
Is there anything else? Any announcements or?
I just had one question, and this is going to be a new person question, so take it with a grain of salt. But so I've learned a lot today, so I appreciate being part of this. I was just curious. I know we stream this, but as far as the discussion and sort of the output of this meeting and these discussions, I mean, how, does that go out to people? I mean, I'm just thinking of my responsibility to go back to my institution and share some of this stuff, and I'm thinking, how else do the rest of the world get information about the topics and the issues that are discussed here? How does that translate into benefiting everybody?
See, everyone's looking at me.
Okay, so the minutes are posted. Yeah, I mean, I know it's streamed too. I just, I'm skeptical that some of our people are watching it the whole time. So it's, I was just curious.
And anything that we would decide, or any other key and pertinent issues, like for example, what Pam was discussing before, would, I would assume, and I've seen these things before, come out as an announcement from the coordinating board to all member colleges and universities.
Okay.
So the DIAC, if the DIAC does something that's significant enough to warrant that, that would come out in that kind of an announcement.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was just seeing the value.
But yes, the minutes are available online, too.
Just the value of the discussion seems to be, even just what people are doing and some of those topics, whether they be formal improvements, is useful to a lot of people, I would think.
Well, is this meeting encoded? Is this meeting recorded?
Yes, in fact, after a while, you'll be able to see it on YouTube. You can
Seriously?
Yeah, you're on YouTube.
All right.
Not likely to go viral.
Next meeting is going to be very, very different than this meeting.
It takes a little while for it to get uploaded, but eventually, yes, you'll be able to see it on YouTube. That's why when I go back to minutes to make sure that I have everything correct, I go back and look at the previous meeting.
Okay.
Todd and I had a brief conversation about this over lunch, because I think I've raised that issue before. Oftentimes, even though the minutes are posted out on the THECB website, they're not pushed out to us until just before the next meeting. And in this case, a lot of time transpired, and so kind of remembering, well, is that what the discussion was? What was the context of that? Is lost in the interim. So if it's possible, at least to the members, to as soon as those are ready to post, we push it out to the list of folks well in advance of the next meeting, just so we can look at it and see, gosh, did I really agree to do that, or is there something else I need to share with my administration?
And you're talking about the YouTube link. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not.
No, just the minutes.
Just the minutes. Okay, sure.
I think
sure.
the YouTube thing's probably more compliance. I can't imagine anybody really sitting through listening to us and trying to glean what was important and what wasn't. But that's right. Who knows what's going to be coming out of our mouths when we see it on YouTube, right? But yeah, if we could send out what the core conversation was in the minutes, the stuff we think is important to carry forward, share that at least with this group, if not looking for a larger group to engage, possibly even the same folks that we're thinking about targeting with this distance education survey, so they know what we think is relevant and what we're doing, and might even be interested in serving at some point.
Okay.
Being nominated too.
One last thing. A while ago, the coordinating board had funded the development of faculty development modules for online learning. And I'm wondering if we can get any data on usage.
I'm sorry.
These are professional development modules that were delivered online. I have it open right now, actually. Okay. You can find them at txprofdev.org. And there were modules on...
That one more time?
Yeah, say that one more time, because I don't know where to find this on YouTube.
Okay, I'm going to send it. No, this is the professional development modules, and I'll send everybody an email right now. Actually.
Okay, great. Thanks. Just do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some
this
data
this is not the repository of learning objects or that sort of thing, which we talked about several years ago.
This is faculty development.
Okay, faculty professional development. Okay.
Who produced that? Was it Lone Star?
I think that was Lone Star.
Lone Star?
Correct.
Now I know what you're talking
Remember
about.
that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So is there usage data?
Yeah, what is
usage
usage
data? Correct.
Yeah, I'd appreciate you sending that out.
I just wanted to, we talked about the ITC conference that several were at last week in Orlando, and Patrick talked about the WCET conference comes up, but Newton, the National University Technology Network's national conference will be in San Antonio, September 22nd through 24th, and a lot of these issues that we discussed today and a lot of speakers around these issues will be at that conference, and since it's local right here in the state, want you to, if you're interested, I'll send you information, but might be a good place to go and just get some of these, hear some of the experts. I think Marshall Hill will probably be invited, and I'm sure he would come if he can to that meeting, so give us a chance to hear it firsthand locally. Yep. Anything else? You get to adjourn the meeting.
Follow up on Sune's.
Yeah.
Follow up on Sune's inquiry about the professional development materials. How are those being updated? Because those have been out there for a few years. Some new technologies have come along and new research to support those.
I don't think they've been updated. So
I suspect that they're not. So at some point they become less and less useful. So in addition to usage, if we see usage is low, that's one thing. If we see that it's low and they're not being revised, then there should be some consideration of, are they still useful?
The last time when the site was first set up, I don't think there was any usage out of those modules because we had asked for usage for the modules on there because we had some modules we developed it when I was at UTEP. And I needed some user stats for that. And so we got stats, so they sent us stats for everything. So most of the other modules were being used, but the online modules were not being used. So I didn't know if it was a communication problem, people didn't know where to find them, what was going on, but I think everybody got an email saying this site is ready and up. I think it'll be useful to kind of see if
it's being used.
There's anything being used at all. I mean, there's been a chunk of change on this.
Well, there are professional development.
$1,000 thing.
The coordinating board supported that, didn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
There are professional development programs going out on a very regular basis from Starlink, and Patsy's advisory chair committee of Starlink, and there are programs coming out about every other month. Those are always updated because they're produced specifically for these issues, and all the community colleges get access to the Starlink programs, but if others are interested in it, you could take a look at it. But that's a good source of current professional development. And I think in the future, more so than even in the past, the focus really is going to be on student success, because it's coordinated now with the TACC New Student Success Center here in Austin. So,
And they're good. They're good modules.
They're good. They're very well done.
Anything else? Okay, well, this meeting of the Ltac is then adjourned, and thank you everybody for coming. It's nice to meet all the new folks. Nice to see all the existing folks. Nice to meet you folks from the coordinating board.
Thank you.